7:30.
This is what I got, my quiz.
Okay, we're ready to start, Michaela.
We're recording.
We're recording? Okay, great. Good evening. I welcome you all to this meeting of the Committee of Infrastructure and the Committee of PEDC. This joint meeting is being held on Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. in the Automatic Chamber and via Zoom teleconference. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda on the city's website for the meeting link. The meeting is being presided over by co-chairs, Michael O'Brien Sr. and Alderman at Large, Melbourne Moran Jr. Will the clerk please take a roll, including all committee members, please?
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Camo is here. Alderman Gavea.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Here.
Alderman Kathy.
I am here.
Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Tebow.
Here.
Mary Lou Blaisdell.
Here.
Paul Shea. Kathy Carden-Smith.
Here.
Michael Buckley.
Here.
Ruth Boland.
Here.
Alderman O'Brien.
Present. Okay, before we get into the crux of the meeting, let me just go over some of our ground rules or basically what is going to happen. You are not going double blind. There's two meetings tonight, two separate meetings. If we should have a vote tonight, whatever it may be, from this task force, we'll then take that particular vote, terminate the meeting, and then go immediately into session of the Joint Committee of Infrastructure and Planning and Economic Development Committee to make a recommendation to the full board. So that's why you see the two separate agendas, and that's the way this is going to be handled. Okay, seeing that, any questions on that, if I wasn't clear? Okay, everybody in agreement? That's good. Okay, I'll open up to a public comment for items only that are on the agenda.
Is there a sign-up sheet?
Pardon?
Is there a sign-up sheet?
There's not a sign-up sheet.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a sign-up sheet since there was not one prepared. We made one.
Well, okay, well, that's good. Just stand in the queue, take your time. There is a 3-minute time limit. It's going to be strictly, of course. Huh? Can you just give us 1 minute?
Sure.
We won't detract from your time. And, okay, hang on. No.
Let's make it this way.
Usually it comes up the program.
Yeah,
It's
somebody-
white out.
That's fine. Yeah, okay, I think we're good. All right. All right, you may stop.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I know this says public discussion or comment for items on the agenda, but these items on the agenda aren't in the packet or online so that we can actually see what they are. So I'm going to just speak against all of this because I don't know what it is. I don't know what the review and suggested changes are for map 1, 2, 3, 4, or any of this data because you didn't provide it to the public. So I'm against all of this. And based on the report that I sent to all of you, a citizen's report on the mayor's data that I obtained on Friday, I can't understand why we're doing this. The utilization rate across 2 months, July and August, 39 days, 4 data points for each day, 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 5 and 7, showed a utilization rate of 6% per seats outdoors. And I explained to you what the assumptions were. I think it was all 2021 data. Nobody emailed me back to correct it. I mean, the disappointing part is this data comes from the mayor's office, 350 pages in raw format with zero explanation on what it was. Not a single word. I mean, I consider that extraordinarily unprofessional to release data in that manner. because your citizens are left to interpret. So I apologize if I interpreted anything incorrectly. Nobody has offered any correction to me. I think it was good data that I looked at and how I looked at it, but I just don't understand. This is the pie chart of all the orange represents the utilization of seats across those 4 times on 39 days in July and August, and this is the actual seats being used with expanded outdoor dining. Nobody's been able to tell us what it was before it was expanded, and I think we need to understand that data. This is, again, the utilization. The orange line shows what the outdoor dining capacity is across the 39 days, and the blue is what is actually being used by restaurants. 3 restaurants do have higher utilization, but in all of that data, there were only a couple of points where it was even at those hours looking like 50% usage. The PPE loans are here, and we've talked about the difficulty in funding and all, but the restaurants that needed money got money. I don't know the circumstances of them having to return money. This is the raw data crunched down. I mean, honestly, why are we doing this? Leave the 4 lanes, go back to outdoor dining like we had it, expand it a bit. You saw the conditions, outdoor seating, the length of the restaurant frontage. Other stores, if they agreed for you to expand. Seating, if it goes into the parking space, there'll be a fee for that. And you can't take spaces in front of other businesses. Allow them to.
Time.
Thank you.
I just have to get my notes.
Next.
I am. We've got the sheet right here. Vanelina Gomez. Good evening. Karen Bill, 95 Parnell Place, Nashua. So I have to agree wholeheartedly with Lori's information because having 6% utilization, it really is kind of crazy to go through all of this, to spend all this money, to put that burden on the restaurateurs who are small businesses and expect them to have to pay the cost of the beer. Really, what we have to do, and I would really love to get this information because I did multiple $million-dollar budgets for several years. So I would assume that somebody has the information about cost of barriers, the installation, the removal, the storage, the loss of parking revenue, the payout to the people that painted them at $150K. So you got to add all that up, divide it by the barriers, boom, that's the cost of one barrier installed in front of your place. And then I know I missed some things last week about having a riser that has to be a certain height and it's, you know, thousands of dollars per spot. Crazy. I mean, this is the crazy train, people. It's time to give Main Street back to the residents of Nashua. Now, if there were people on this committee outside of Alderman who lived, you know, on Marie Avenue and all over the town, not one restaurant or a business, oh my, cry foul. Everybody would be up in arms. Well, guess what? I'm up in arms. I've been told by no less than 3 aldermen that I should have been on this committee, but was told that it only was going to be downtown people. Absurd. It's the crazy train. Give the street back to the residents. Give the restaurateurs a break. There's always been outside dining. I can't tell you how many times after I got out of work that I'd shoot down, surf, and hang with friends and sit there, and there was never an uproar about there's not enough room. It's called first come, first served. Remember that? And then there's called a wait list. There's never going to be a day where Main Street's closed off and traffic is diverted to the side streets. They were never designed for that kind of traffic. It's a pipe dream, okay? I'll tell you right now, it's never going to happen. So, and what about, oh, remember when the bike lane came about? Oh, we were all about the bikes, and let's get the bikes, and let's get healthy. Where the hell did the bike lane go? It's been gone for 2 years. I want the bike lane back. I have a friend who bikes downtown every single day and goes to a restaurant, not on this list, but who had barriers in front of them, let's do the right thing and see how this year goes. Because, you know, the PAC
Time.
isn't gonna have anything until 2024, because it's not done, and you have to book bands a year out. So, thank you for your time, and we could make the meeting a lot shorter if we all get off the crazy train. The next person on the list.
Your time is up, miss.
I know, I'm saying the
Courtesy
next
to
person.
decorum, thank you.
Yeah. Lena?
Next, please.
Hi.
There's a trick to it. Good luck.
I think I got it. Lena Gomez, 133 Main Street from San Francisco Kitchen. I'm not here to, in favor, against, I don't know what decision is going to be made. All I do ask is that please approve the barriers, and if they do get accepted and approved, I ask for at least 2 parking spaces. As you all know, the barriers are thick and very big. In front of my storefront, I have like a landscape, a garden, you can call it, that I cannot allow, it doesn't allow me to put any tables in front of that. So if I'm just strictly limited to a parking space or less than that because it goes into another person's storefront, I'm not even going to be able to put more than 2 tables, only 2. So I just ask, please, we all need sales to survive. It's not that I'm doing something bad in the books. It's just that a restaurant with no sales is not going to survive. I was not approved for any PPP because of the fact that I was a new owner and I did not have numbers to compare for 2019. However, if I do have to, and if it is required to put numbers to give you to show how much sales was made in the summer of 2020 and in 2021, I will. But all I ask is that please allow me to have at least 2 parking spaces, to put at least 10 tables out there. That will help me tremendously, not only myself, but the employees also. Thank you, and that's all.
Let the record show that we are joined by Mr. Shea. Well,
7:42.
yeah, you did have a seat there. Anybody else for public comment?
Lena Gomez?
Miss, I don't care about a list. You're there.
Jerry
If you want to
Wingate
speak,
here?
speak.
Well, we all signed up in the order we came, Chair O'Brien.
You can follow the order if you wish. The mic is there. Let's get organized, people. We have something to do. No, I don't want the list. Do not come in this chamber, sir. Thank you.
My name is Gary Wingate, 15 Sherman Street in Nashua. I want to give you a couple bullet points. First of all, in regard to the support vocabulary lesson. In regard to the placement of the restaurant's eating areas, I want to establish that outside dining is defined as the dining on the sidewalks with the tables and chairs placed in front of the boundaries of the relevant restaurant, as they do in Portsmouth, Boston, and Concord. For the extended outdoor dining, it should be defined as tables and chairs in the parking area on the street and must be placed in the parking spaces in front of the boundaries of the restaurant. Bullet point 2, Tim Cummings originally showed a plan on extended dining on our block on Water Street to Factory Street. The San Francisco Kitchen people went to City Hall and tried to bargain with them. She ultimately was hoping to get 2 parking spaces, as she mentioned tonight. The first parking space would be directly in front of one half of our first storefront. The second parking space would make the 2 parking spaces together totaling 1.5 of our 2 storefronts. So due to the nature of those planters blocking some of their sidewalk, we are willing to allow the first parking spot and could get permission from the hairdresser on the corner that abuts her to get permission to extend her outdoor dining, again, which is on the sidewalk. So we both agreed that it is about the same space as a parking space, so net-net, with the extra sidewalk allotment plus 1 parking space, she would achieve the same amount of space as 2 parking spaces she wanted. So I'm proposing that she has 1 parking spot and then the sidewalk space in front of the hairdresser to achieve that. Number 3, within the next block going south with Jajabel's, there is a sentiment that she does not need any extended outdoor dining at all. With respect to her and her business, we patronize her also, but like the City Room, who decided last week not to extend outdoor dining, she is open like they are, 5 days a week, usually 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. She is not open in the late afternoon, she's not open in the evening, and she's not open at nights. The manager of the Bank of America and the Gentle Dental employees both feel very strongly that much space is unnecessary. It blocks off parking for 60% of the available block, which they want for their customers. She has a uniquely different seating arrangement. She has a cafe-style table and chairs, which are much smaller in scale. So on the sidewalk, you can easily accommodate 2 tables, and with permission from the new clothier that's next door to her, she could span at least 4 tables. And if that didn't work, she could always resort to the
30
pre-COVID
seconds.
format, where she had several tables aligned on Factory Street. So I propose that the extending dining for that block and utilize the sidewalk space to the uses, I propose that no extended dining on that block. Number 4, as far as the dates of extended outdoor dining, I suggest starting on Memorial Day, Friday, May 27th, and extend to Labor Day, September 5th. This coincides with the school calendars and the climate and the usage. And the last thing is we are in favor of pay to play
Time.
for the season, which hopefully we get some numbers sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is Phil Bouchard.
Thank you, Gary. Hi, I'm Phil Bouchard. My family's been downtown for 110 years now.
Your address, sir.
Pardon me?
Your address.
111 to 117 Main Street is our block, and my business is Corriveau Insurance Agency.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm in favor of keeping 4 lanes open to downtown and everything, and have the flow of traffic be as it always was. It allows for a lot more consistency with traffic coming in and out of Nashua, thinking that the Main Street is your only north-south route besides the highway that runs through Nashua. So you have trucks, you have fire and ambulance and everybody else that has talked to you about the availability of them coming through town, that need to come through town with no barriers as well. I would hope that you take that into consideration regarding your thoughts about this subject. I also want to express the fact that, and reiterate a little bit about the low usage rates that they're talking about. I understand there are restaurants here, the Focus family and Michael Timothy's and Gomez's. I give them all the credit in the world and all the respect in the world, what they've done for downtown. But I still feel that the sidewalks, the way they were built with the Mayor Lozo did by expanding the width of these sidewalks, the intention there, ladies and gentlemen, was to have outside dining and outside seating and everything like that, okay? It served its purpose, like what we just did with the barriers, ladies and gentlemen. It served its purpose, okay? COVID isn't with us all the time. In fact, it's going away. So let's go back to where Nashua always functioned, and function properly and very efficiently with the outside dining that you had. That is the vision I have of Nashua, okay, as a downtown person. One more comment, might be outside of the barriers here, but frankly, being downtown for so many years, and maybe Mr. Focus might reiterate with me, I think your downtown's a mess. It's a mess. All the construction that's been going on downtown, breaking up the streets and things like that. How is all that gonna
30
continue
seconds.
with the barriers and with a new performance center and everything like that? I mean, for the last, that hasn't been happening just for, a year, 2-3 years now. Your downtown's been a mess. It really has. That's all I have to say. I appreciate your time and effort and everything, and thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Cheryl Roy. Oh, no, I'm writing.
You got people online. Obi, you have people online who want to.
I'm Cheryl Roy. I live on Hill Street in Nashua, right outside of downtown here. I'm here again to speak out against the barriers. like I was a few weeks back, for a lot of reasons. But I wanted to address some comments that were made at the last meeting by an alderman who made it very clear he
Ma'am.
wasn't interested. Yes?
Comments from the last meeting are not on the agenda. As our tradition, the first half, public comment is items on the agenda.
This has to do with the agenda.
Ma'am, that's our decorum.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to take somebody from the Zoom audience, Laura Cahoon.
Laura Cahoon, 30 Greenwood Drive. First of all, I agree with everything that all these people have said. To look at this report and see that only 6% was utilized was ridiculous. It also does not tell us of the 6%, how much of it was on the prior, where we had prior outside dining. So I think what the aldermen are doing is destroying our small town and making it a mess. I disagree with this. I think this should have been on the ballot for the residents to tell you people what we actually want. You know, mayor seemed to shove the police commissioner, on the ballot fast. We should have put this on the ballot because I think, we're allowing you people to tell us what we want. And at this point, we're telling you, we don't want these barriers. We don't want our city turned into, a parking lot. I'm just asking you people to listen to some of the residents and more importantly, I wouldn't even address the alderman from last meeting because I wear my mask. But if there's a safety issue, I'm telling you, I will back that person to sue the city up the yin yang. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Thompson.
Bowman. Thank you.
Bowman, excuse me.
I'm going to talk as a person that's over the age of 60, and
Ma'am, could you give again your name and address, please, for the record?
Oh, sure. Karen Tholman, Shingle Mill Drive in Nashua. And as a person over the age of 60, I cannot drive downtown, get out of my car in front of a store that I want to visit because I have to find a parking spot somewhere, so it's not even worth my time going downtown. And if the barriers are replaced again this year, I'm not going there, which is sad because that's part of my community and I can't visit it.
Is that it, Ms. Tholman?
I think that's enough. I can't believe that you're gonna take away all our parking spots downtown.
Okay. Well, we thank you for your comment, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Matthew Guthrow.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Matthew Guthrow, 104 Fawn Lane. To pick up where Lori Altalano left off, as a taxpayer here in Nashua, I'm confused as to how we got here. With a 6% utilization of the seating downtown, it's really ridiculous to see why we're even hosting these joint meetings for a pie-in-the-sky project that will only choke our street traffic, eliminate much-needed parking, and unnecessarily spend our tax dollars on this infrastructure boondoggle. Every one of your speakers tonight has come out to say that we are not in favor of this. It's time you listen to your constituents. You've received pages and pages of emails from your constituents speaking out against this. This is all in favor of the restaurants, who really should be footing the bill for these expenditures and not the taxpayers. Do you think our residents are going to park and walk blocks to get their haircut, pick up their prescriptions, get their dental work, pick up or drop off their tailoring, or even do their banking? In this crazy scenario, the mayor and Tim Cummings are channeling their best Kevin Costner, hearing whispers from downtown. If they build it, they will come. We need to stop this madness. This shouldn't be considered anymore than just a year basis only. This should only be a pet project we're talking about, but the what you're talking about in terms of this legislative item is going to be for 3 years. We can't even look that far ahead, especially with the numbers that you have already. Our historic downtown should not be brought down to gridlock with ugly graffiti barriers, construction, and severe parking issues. We need to stop this. This should not continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to the list. Next.
Thank you, Elizabeth Lowe, 17 Roby Street. Three things I'd like to say. I'd like to advocate in favor of outside dining. I think it means a lot to everyone in this city, and I think everyone in this room can agree on that. We want outside dining. Okay? We don't see the need, and we haven't from the very start of this discussion. We don't see the need to give our infrastructure to the food and beverage industry. I love them. I've worked for them most of my life. So that they can have additional dining, so that they can have dining on our streets. For the record, I want to correct something that is germane to this discussion, because this discussion is going to involve expenses that the taxpayer is going to pay. It was said that the riverfront work is not paid for by taxpayers. And that needs to be corrected, because every bit of work that's done in the municipality, well, let me take that back, is done from taxpayer revenues. In a TIF, the revenues are held specifically for that area. But the money that's held came from the taxpayers. So please understand that. It's not true that TIF districts are not improved with taxpayers' money. That's not true. And for someone to say that, someone that's a director of economic development to say that is sadly misguided. We started this discussion because some people didn't want expanded dining. It was called, a compromise was called for. We all agreed to compromise. But the compromise began at,
30 seconds.
let's say we have 2 lanes of travel in downtown Nashua. What do you want? No, that's not fair, because the disagreement began at the majority of testimony that was saying no expanded dining. So that's not fair what was done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Beth Scare, 111 East Hobart Street. I am a big supporter of our small businesses and restaurants downtown. I saw the awful harm of the shutdowns to the restaurants. I was delighted when you all voted for the expanded dining. But now the shutdowns are over. The masks ordinances are over. I mean, even today I was at physical therapy. That's in masks at medical offices is ending, at least some. So now it's time to return back to normal. We need to refocus on other issues of public safety. And the expanded dining, as we know, creates traffic slowdowns and delays in emergency response time. This is a very serious matter. Having had a house fire, I know how every minute that passes means more destruction, more loss of property, or loss of life, or loss of bodily functions in the case of an ambulance. And isn't public safety what we've been focused on all these years? years of the pandemic. And there's another issue besides emergency response time, which is pollution. If you ask Public Health Director Bobby Bagley, she can tell you pollution is a leading cause of heart disease. And people who work and live downtown don't have a choice about breathing in that pollution. Many of these people are poor or disabled, like the new soup kitchen. The new shelter and soup kitchen. And they're already struggling with health problems. Alderman Lopez, whose ward is downtown, can tell you about, his constituents and what they're dealing with. So please look into that. And then another health issue is I've heard from some handicapped people, and I'm sure there are many others that say that they drive downtown, they can't find a close parking spot. They can only walk a very short distance, and they have to turn around and go back.
30 seconds.
So they've missed an opportunity to go downtown because the parking is pushed to a farther distance. And I'm asking you to think about all these things, and also that what you're doing is there's trade-offs. You're trading off benefiting one group for other groups. And why do the taxpayers of Nashua have to give up their public sidewalks and streets for private businesses? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Don Whalen, 12 Lincoln Ave. Putting barriers in downtown Nashua for another summer is a bad idea. I'm all in favor of outdoor dining, and at the time, the barriers helped the restaurant businesses during the pandemic. But now we are getting back to normal, and downtown Nashua should follow suit. We need to do what is right for all of Nashua's businesses. Placing barriers in downtown Nashua clearly favors restaurants over other businesses and puts all other downtown businesses at a distinct disadvantage. I love the downtown area and have been to a bunch of restaurants this year already, including Oddfellows, Garden, O'Brien's, Peddler's Daughter, Surf, Martha's, Tostow's, Empinelli's, The Flight Center, and MT's Local Kitchen just the other night to celebrate my daughter's birthday. Why would any appointed, volunteer, or elected official in Nashua give a clear and distinct advantage to restaurants over any other businesses in downtown Nashua? This puts those folks in a position of picking winners and losers, which is not right under any sort of circumstances, including last year when the Board of Aldermen were pushing for a 9:30 p.m. curfew for all restaurants and bars, which I was also vehemently opposed to. Shouldn't all downtown businesses have an equal chance to thrive? What happens when non-restaurant businesses start closing up because of the barriers, lack of convenient parking, and lack of patrons? Is this what we really want for downtown Nashua? Let's do what's right and support all of our downtown businesses and leave the barriers in the past with the pandemic and the mask mandate. I will continue to support Nashua's downtown businesses, my dentist, accountant, bank, and so on, but I certainly won't be going into any restaurants if the barriers are put in place this year. I will take my business elsewhere within Nashua or one of the surrounding towns. So I say yes to outside dining, but just say no to the barriers.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Evening, my name is Albert Miller, 11 Bates Drive in Nashua. The pandemic required that the restaurants got some help, and they did get help. They did get the help, but now the pandemic is over. There is, at one time, the restaurants, they had to have, every other table had to be vacant, right? And now the restaurant is full again. There is no need for sidewalk restaurant service. And for me, the barriers, they present a handicap. It's not right for a lot of pedestrians, for instance, to go to the bank or go even to the pharmacy. They have to walk a relatively great distance. Some people, they are with a wheelchair and so on. It's just not fair. And it's a hindering to the traffic, at least it is to me. And I dislike it. I'm sorry, I dislike the barriers, and I say there is no need for it. And besides, it costs a lot of money to the city of Nashua and therefore to the taxpayers of Nashua. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you. Excuse me. Tim Sennett, 62 Underhill Street, Nashua. Just to provide a little balance, I am in favor of expanded outdoor dining. About 27 years ago, I sat in my dad's home office while he was doing some commissioned work for an organization called Destination Downtown, creating the first very primitive web presence for that. And that phrase has always stuck in my head, Destination Downtown. I know it's evolved into a lot of different entities currently. It's the Great American Downtown. But I always go back to that, 10 years old in my dad's office, Destination Downtown. Growing up, downtown was a destination, not just for my family. We came down to a lot of the block parties that don't seem to happen that much anymore. I remember standing out in front of Martha's with a stage set up right out in front of it, listening to somebody play Deep Purple songs when I was about 13 years old. It was good memories. A lot of businesses that throughout my childhood and my teenage years drove me downtown, 100 Main, where me and my friends played games all hours of the weekend. Drifters over on Factory Street, where I was down there every Friday and Saturday night seeing local bands from my high school. I stutter when I think of this issue as the barriers. I think that's what it gets reduced down to a lot, is the barriers. To me, ideas change, ideas evolve, and I think it's short-sighted to think of this issue as just the barriers. I keep going back to the phrasing expanded outdoor dining because maybe this year it is the barriers. Maybe next year it's something a little different. Maybe those sidewalks expand more. Maybe we reevaluate the parking downtown. Maybe we shine a light on the parking that is available downtown because it is there, but I don't think it's signed well. I don't think it's communicated well. If I'm going down to the Garden for a sandwich and I can't find a parking spot right in front of it, I know there's a spot right behind it that I can get a spot and walk right in their back door. A lot of people don't know that. The opportunities are there to turn this into more than just an issue of the barriers, and that's what I'd like to see happen. I'd like to see this move forward. Regardless of what happens, I'm gonna be downtown every Tuesday and Thursday on my lunch hour taking a walk. Come say hi if you run into me, and I'm gonna be eating down there every Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody online, it's,
Somebody with your hand up on Zoom?
yeah, Fire Freak.
Yes, Roger Doucette, 20 Marshall Street. Yeah, the barriers, I think they gotta go. In the years, the first 2 years, the city of Nashua has spent anywhere close to $250,000 to $300,000 on paying for the barriers to go up, lost revenue in parking, really? Now you look at it also like income tax, the inflation rate is going up, income tax is going up. I'm sure there's property tax in Nashua that's gone up. Price of food's gone up, utility bills are going up. Everything's going up, but everybody's paycheck. So why should we foot the bill for people that want to eat out there? If they want to eat out there, then the restaurant should pay for it. And if they don't want to pay for it, no one gets the barriers. It's very simple. We are very tired of paying for everything. That's the time is now is let's get rid of stupid things, even like the islands in the middle of Main Street. Get rid of them. It'd be easier for the fire trucks, ambulance, and police to get through. I don't know whose dumb idea that was, but those got to go too. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paula Johns. I'm a little bit winded. I just came from my budget meeting. I'm short. What can I say? Thank you, Alderman. I appreciate it.
Very simple.
Very simple for you, not for me. I'm still thinking budget at the school district. I want to say thank you for allowing this hearing to go on. My problem is here, last year I made complaints to the city, to the mayor, and to the Governor's Council on Disability, and I've made other complaints. You have taken the handicap spots away for people who have a disability. I own a plate on my car because I have a disability. My daughter and I drove down Main Street, and she sent me the pictures, and the handicap spots that were taken away, they were never put back. And to hear Mr. Cummings say that last year, ADA accessible, we were proud of what we've done. We had those ramps. Ramps are not parking spaces for people who have a disability to come down and visit the stores and the restaurants. How dare you take these spaces away from people who need them more than anything? I'm shocked. Oh, not really. I'm appalled that he says we'll relocate them, because I listened to the meeting and I started writing down your words verbatim, Mr. Cummings. I'm also shocked with what's been said about the fact that parking revenue. And the last caller talked about money we keep losing. We can't do $250 more for veterans because that's lost taxes. But we can lose revenue for the people here in the city because it was the parking meters that paid for downtown. And I remember when we put them on, and those new meters back when I sat on this board, and Alderman Wilshire could, I'm sure, remembered, because the meters paid for the downtown parking and all that. So we're losing between $30,000 to $45,000 of revenue, meter revenue. That's a lot of money to lose a year. We're giving everything away for free. How much did it cost us to stripe for the bike paths down there? How much did it cost for us to paint graffiti on barriers? And that we removed them, we put them back. This year we're gonna let it be done in-house. It should have always been done in-house. We're paying people in Public Works. They did the Main Street project with Donnelly, didn't they? We tied them all up. But that was okay. It didn't cost us any additional money because we did it in-house. But now we're losing between $30,000 to $45,000 in revenue, $5,000 to $8,000 in 3 years in parking violations, and we've got these budgets coming
30
before
seconds.
us. Am I done?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. So your budget is going to come very shortly because we're doing our budget in the school district. And I'm talking regarding myself, nobody else on the board. But take a look at the people who have a disability, because Alderman Moran talked about that, about wheelchairs and walking devices. But you know what? It means nothing if you don't have any place to park. And I, for one, am not going to come down because I'm not going to ride around to try to figure out where I can park.
Time.
There is no parking downtown. Remember, you disabled people. We pay taxes here, too. Thank you.
Next.
Charlene Selesky, 9 Hill Street, Nashua, New Hampshire. Again, I'm here to reiterate, I'm not for the barriers, not that I'm not for successive restaurants. I work in one. But I would like to say that I really think this should have been made more public than it was. I think it could have been a ballot option for the residents to have a say. And I think that that's something that you all need to consider when you're talking about expanding into a destination. I've been very vocal about, I don't consider Nashua a destination, I consider it a gateway. It takes you from one place to the other, north to south and over the river. There's nothing for me to bring my family to downtown, as there was 44 years ago when I began my residency here. My kids were educated here, I have 8 grandchildren. We had duck races, we had parades. Where will parades go? Will there ever be a parade again if Nashua's downtown is blocked off? All that time from May to November where there's no cars allowed, no parades? Is that what we're gonna do? Is that what we're going to? No more America? I'm frustrated with it, I gotta say. I paid taxes a long time. I feel I'm well informed and I appreciate you people that give your full attention and listen, and I don't appreciate the people that are rolling their eyes and looking away when someone's talking. It's just beyond me. And I really would like to see this go on a ballot, a special election for the people to have a say. I still think that if the sidewalks are going to be used, that if you're going to expand out, then you need to charge a fee to expand to that. If you're a business owner, you do that. I work in the South End. I can't take my restaurant space out onto Daniel Webster Highway and ask you to put barriers up so I can pass out the food to people going by. The emergency access is a problem for me. I think everything is the horse before the cart. This started long ago with somebody that said this started 27 years ago. Destination Downtown. We haven't had anything that has to do with families. This has all been the focus. What are we going to do to get the city up and running? What are we going to do to make it welcoming to the people that live here? Because I can tell you, if I didn't live in Nashua, I wouldn't be saying, oh, let's go to Nashua. It's a destination. For what? I've been very vocal about it. We don't have history. We haven't done what Lowell has done. We haven't done what Portsmouth has done. We're not Portland, Maine. We're a small city that's a gateway. And I appreciate everybody's hard work that has succeeded in all of this. I'm sorry I didn't come to
30
buy
seconds.
Christmas ornaments this year. I had to go up to Sunapee to do it in the summer. I just want to say that please really seriously consider the people of the city, not just the individuals. If it was put to vote, those individuals wouldn't even have an opportunity to vote on it. You've taken our voice away, and I want my voice heard. I want to be understood, and I want to be appreciated, and I want to give business to the downtown. I plan on dying here, not just living here. So please, really, seriously, put this back on the table, and...
Time.
I'm done? I'm done, okay. I'm done, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Miss in the tan sweater, I will give you another opportunity if you wish. As on the agenda, please, and thank you. I know some people took a walk in the park on it, but please come forward. I want everybody to have their chance. This is your opportunity.
Does it have to be items on the agenda? She was going to talk about what was said in the last meeting.
Traditionally, as you know, the first comment is items on the agenda.
Are you going to waive that for her? Is that why you're inviting her back up?
Well, she wants to make a comment on an item on the agenda.
That's not clear.
As I said earlier, I'm back again to show my displeasure at the barriers, the thoughts of it.
Can you say your name and address again, please?
Oh, Roy, Hill Street in Nashua. But I do want to address comments that were made here from a person on this board that were totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate. I'm disgusted. He was rude, ignorant, and made rude, ignorant, biased comments, as far as I'm concerned. He apparently disregards citizens' concerns for response times of police and fire. His solution to that problem was shrugged off as, they'll figure it out. He felt it important to remind us that no one has died in the past 2 years with the barriers up. I guess we just can assume it won't happen, so we shouldn't worry about it. He used comparisons totally unrelated to the accessibility of police and fire downtown, to Christmas on Daniel Webster Highway and traffic on Amherst Street. Maybe somebody should tell him that there's plenty of places to pull off on Daniel Webster and on Amherst Street to get out of the way of police and fire vehicles. Not with a 2-lane road through Main Street downtown. Some people, and then the worst was he felt as though he had to really go low and say that the people that were against these barriers are also the people that didn't want to wear masks. How dare you? How dare you? You don't know who the
Miss,
heck
I'm going to end it right there. This is not on the agenda. And I warned you.
This is about my opinion on putting...
You're entitled to your opinion.
Right,
If you want to
I am,
wait to
and
the end of
that's
the
what I'm
meeting,
saying.
we will listen
And I'm
to your
giving you my
opinion.
opinion on a certain person. It shouldn't be
Ma'am, this is
allowed.
not the format for that.
I didn't think that was the
Ma'am, please don't argue with the chair.
What's that?
I'm asking you, please do not argue with the chair. Thank you, ma'am. All right, anybody else for public comment? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Billy Focus, 185 Main Street, Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm going to try to make it short. I think you all know that I am for the outside dining. I've been here 62 years on this street. Again, excuse me?
No, she was saying, talking about you, I'm just saying, very nice comment.
Oh.
She was saying something bad.
Well, thank you.
That's okay.
Anyway, I've never seen downtown so vibrant and alive. And I think what we've done is amazing. I think it's a benefit to the retail stores. We're bringing people downtown, getting them to expose our beautiful downtown. I have to agree with Gary Wingate. I think there is compromise, and I've always been all about compromise. I think the idea about the Bank of America block with Jessica saying they don't need that, we are going to get more parking downtown. And again, with the compromises that we've made in the past, we have made that happen. I encourage you, and again, I feel like the vocal minority here tonight, but we all know how I feel. Use your heads, do what you think is best for the greater downtown Nashua. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Thank you. I'm going to close the portion of public comment, and now we can move on to the items on the agenda. Just to reiterate, the items that are on the agenda, if we should come to a conclusion at any particular time, any member of this board may call for a vote of the board for a recommendation that will be made to the full committee. At that particular time, we will thank the citizens who have volunteered for this committee, and we will reconvene as the Committee of Infrastructure and PDC to vote on the recommendations of the combined board with the citizen group. And we'll make that recommendation to the full board. That's the intention if it should happen this evening. If not, again, at the conclusion of this meeting, I will call for adjournment of this committee and then call into order the combined committee of planning, economic development, and infrastructure, and then seek a motion to adjourn immediately. And because the item will remain on the table at that particular time. Okay, so if everybody has that format, I say tally ho. Question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that you have a nice organized list here, and I do appreciate that.
Yes, please read it.
I did.
Thank you.
If I may, I would like to ask a question through you to Mr. Cummings for clarification, if I may.
Why don't we let Mr. Cummings go through the presentation, because there's got to be questions, and I'm sure, does your question involve with the barriers and the format of this evening?
It was regarding something he said about logistics last week, and I just want to make sure I heard him correctly, because I don't want to misunderstand him and then ask questions later.
I'll allow it.
Question. Mr. Cummings, if I understand correctly, there needs to be some room between the barriers and the travel lane. So, for instance, a barrier could not sit on the outside edge of that door opening area because that would directly abut the travel lane. So there needs to be some room between a barrier and the travel lane. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know what that's, just some sort of space?
Correct. I believe that was Dan Hudson who made that reference at the prior meeting. And what I believe he was suggesting was, or at least if my recollection is accurate, there was a suggestion that we had space because of a quote-unquote bike lane, which was actually more aptly described as a shoulder, would create enough space to allow for the extended outdoor dining to be solely in the parking spaces. And what Mr. Hudson and I were trying to call your attention to is that wasn't necessarily accurate because there isn't the amount of space that you might be thinking that is there. And because you would be using the New Jersey barriers, which has about a 2 to 3 foot base, you would actually have to encroach into the travel lane. Or if you were to set it back as being suggested, you would encroach so much into the parking space, you actually wouldn't really be able to use it from an operational perspective.
Thank you.
Yes, Alderman Theobald.
Yeah, I just want to clear one thing up, just get the elephant out of the room before we begin this so we can move on to the things we need to. You know, I don't want, you know, my comments last week to really derail with
Alderman
this.
Theobald, can you yield to the end of the meeting of that, because I really want to get on topic. I understand.
Okay.
People took, and I'm sympathetic, people took
I
wide
yield.
liberties
I yield.
of not going on the agenda,
I
items
yield.
under the agenda.
I yield, Chairman.
And it was duly noted by this chair.
I still yield. Thank you.
So I think that we need to carry on forward to do the people's business. I cannot control, unfortunately, what.
Okay, that's fine. Go to
I
it.
wish, but.
Go to it. That's fine.
Okay, thank you, and I thank you for your courtesy, Alderman. Okay, let's get right to it. Up before us is, I think we discussed at the last meeting, we're going to go by map and look at the particular areas. Now, when we go to the sections, you might see some of the further items down the list on the agenda may be related, and I will allow you to bring them up to basically discuss at that particular point. But again, I really want to try to move this along. I don't think at this particular point in the committee's existence, and we do have the target date, if this is going to start, that I think we can come to some conclusion, if not tonight, in the subsequent night. So let's get to work, folks. All right, so Director Cummings, you bring up map, what we will call map 1?
Yes, map 1, Mr. Chair, I just showed it on the screen here.
Yeah, can you do us the favor that you did before? Can you bring that up bigger? And
Sure, certainly.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Except we lost the geographic where map 1, so could you just mention that in your highlight?
Sure. So here we are here. Really, this is the Railroad Square area that I'm focused on right here. There was really no real changes from last year to this year as what's being presented. At one time, we had it on the other side of the parking lot abutting the Hunt Library, but we moved it over to closer to the restaurants. We did that between 20 and 21, or at the end of 21, I should say. So really no changes from the logistical layout from last year as proposed.
Okay, any questions by members of the board? Yes.
Are there any handicap spots in Railroad Square? Are there any handicap spots in Railroad Square?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and they're still there?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Actually, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I apologize. You know what? I wasn't going to do this, but since it was brought up, I just want to correct the record on something, if I may. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go to a different screen. I think this is really, I guess, important to the conversation at hand to make sure, just for an educational perspective. So I'm going to the GIS map that we use internally to help navigate the conversation. And so right here, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor right here. I'm gonna click on it and look at that. It says relocated handicap spot. That was a handicap spot that's currently in existence. We recognize it's behind the barrier. It was suggested in a previous speaker that we weren't sensitive to these considerations. We relocated that, and you'll see it's proposed as new handicap spot. And so we have taken that into consideration. We fully recognize the fact that we need to provide handicap parking. This plan does do that. Thank you.
And Director Cummings, a question from the chair, if I may, to you. According to the state of New Hampshire RSA, every parking space is a handicap spot. Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct, sir.
And they have full entitlement of all benefits granted, even though it's not marked as a handicap spot?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go back now to my previous screen, which we were using for helping to facilitate this conversation. So again, to answer the very specific question, we are preserving all the current handicap parking spaces in Railroad Square. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Alderman Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cummings, could you give me, if you can, an approximation of how many parking spaces are being used by all of those barrier spaces?
I have not counted those spaces.
Best guess?
I would
Looks
say
like
four in the front. I don't believe there was any
It's two there.
here.
I get coffee there every morning. It's two.
Two, okay, so two. There's no parking that occurs along the side here, and I believe that there's just two spaces right in here.
Okay.
And again, I want to just kind of point this out. So right here, this corner here, so we're very sensitive to this corner because we know that there's an automobile use that's actually right behind it. We will do what we can to preserve the parking that's right in front of the automobile shop because we've worked through those issues in the past. I raise that just because I know that we've dealt with this issue.
And Director Cummings, can you pan out just a bit so Alderman Kathy can look to see the municipal parking lot and the parking on Canal Street as well?
Sure.
That is unaffected by this barrier process.
My question is unrelated to that and will come full circle later on in the meeting.
Okay, but Director Cummings, can you point out the parking of Canal and the Railroad Square vicinity?
So this is Canal right here.
And that's all parking, correct?
Right here. All this is on-street parking right here.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Alderman Dow.
I just want to point out that Abbott Street, I think it's Abbott Street.
Clinton Street.
Clinton Street is one way.
Yes, it is. Yep. It's one way from the north to the south. Any other further questions? Yes, Director Shea.
I just have
Commissioner Shea, excuse me.
Thank you. I just have a comment. First of all, I've been late to these last two meetings. I just want folks to know.
We noticed.
And it's not a matter of disrespect or tardiness. I work evenings and I've done my best to be here as soon as I can. So with that being said.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the one comment that I have, and this is something that I've thought of from time to time, we've got Lowell Street there. There is free parking on Lowell Street. It is a single lane of traffic. It is quite wide. I don't know that we have diligently evaluated that street for the possibility of diagonal parking in that stretch of road. It's not a make or break issue. I just want to bring it up while we're talking about this area. I would really like us to look at Lowell Street and see, because for per linear foot, you get something like 24% more parking when you go diagonal versus parallel. So I would really like to see us have Lowell Street potentially, if it's feasible, be adjusted to have diagonal parking on one side, probably the south side, because I think you'd get the most per foot area of parking to adjust it to that configuration.
Commissioner Shea, your points are well taken, but however, I feel that it's beyond the scope of the limit of what we're supposed to focus on by this committee. But I think as we look, we are conducting a parking study, and I think that would be most certainly addressed at that particular level.
Thank you.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to say that we actually have submitted to the state a state transportation improvement project, which would look at this Lowell Street area, Canal Street area, and try to do exactly what's suggested by increasing the amount of parking and increase the type of supply and traffic flow throughout that whole neighborhood.
Thank you.
Okay, any other further questions on map 1? Okay, yes.
Oh, I thought we were just looking at foodies and, are we going, what's this yellow section at the bottom? It's on map 1. Is that extended dining in front of the old barbecue place?
Down here, so if we're ready to move on down here, yes, Mr. Chair? I mean-
Yes, please. I forgot that, yeah, I made you blow it up, but I didn't see that.
So I have not heard any changes addressed to the north, so moving the map on down further to the south. We made the most changes from last year to this year in this section, or I should say this is one of the areas where we've made a lot of changes. Nothing really being allowed out in front of Peddler's Daughter here, as you can see. And then,
Mr. Chair, could you blow it back up?
okay,
Thank you.
can blow it back up. Oh, that's.
Use the plus sign, the little plus sign, just click on that.
All right.
Jetty, careful, he'll have you running the thing.
All right, so again, down here's the southern end. And again, this is the area where we would start the narrowing. It's been previously explained, it has to happen before the streetlight intersection. Couple traffic calming type of details out here prior to entering into it. This is essentially what is being proposed. I can move on to the next map if you'd like.
I got a follow-up question.
Okay.
Okay, Alderman Dow.
And just reiterate, where that yellow barrier is, there are 3 lanes to the right of it, is that correct?
Correct.
2 going north, 1 south?
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, you'd have 4 lanes.
4 lanes,
Yeah, one's a turning lane.
You're just getting out of the turning lane, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Alderman Kathy.
I have a question, maybe for Alderwoman Clee, because I believe that's her ward. Has there been any response from that building where there's apartments above Riverwalk and Thai Place? Aren't there some apartments up in that building? Has there been, I don't know if they use the parking in that parking lot and they've had any responses from Lake House. Thank you.
So
No.
back up.
Thank you.
Nope.
Actually, Ms. Boland, you had your hand up?
Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
You pull the
So-
mic in, you've got to speak right into it. Or...
Sorry. So back down a little bit again.
Okay, back down.
So the one you just, yeah, at the top there, there's not a open business there right now? Is that going to be a restaurant that we have, gonna have barriers in front of, or is that an open business right now?
There's not an open business right now, but for the last couple of years, we've been hearing that a chicken restaurant, a chicken and, the name escapes me, but yes, there'll be a certain type of chicken restaurant that is looking to go into here at some point.
So that's not the chicken restaurant that just went into the Daryl's building, is it?
This is the Darrow's building.
The pink one up there? No.
That's a parking spot. She's talking about Riverside.
Yeah, Riverside Barbecue.
I'm sorry.
On the north of the Riverton, the purple spot.
Okay, so you're talking about right here.
Yes.
So that is under a lease agreement to be built out as a restaurant. My understanding is it's supposed to be a barbecue restaurant, and it's been under construction for about 2 years now. There's no plans to put any type of outdoor dining in that area. I've spoken with the building owner and his attorney, and they understand, and that's what they
Then why is there barriers
What's the
there?
purple? Ask him what the purple is.
What's the purple?
It's a proposed handicap parking spot.
Oh, okay, purple versus pink. Thank you.
To Ms. Boland and to the general public, keep in mind that the Riverwalk development is going on the west side of the river. And where you, I'll call it the former Riverside Cafe.
Riverside Barbecue.
Director Cummings, can you mention how that may be incorporated in the Riverwalk project?
So, okay, so this is the, again, former Riverside Barbecue. We have plans to build out similar to what you see over here on Peddler's Daughter, a cantilever structure in and along here that would allow for pedestrians to walk along the river's edge right here. And we fully would anticipate that, just like the way Peddler's Daughter takes advantage of the cantilevering, we would hope to encourage some sort of activation of that area with some sort of outdoor dining of some sort.
The point that the chair is trying to get to, it may lead into a minimum impact of outdoor dining, maybe, in that area where they have the option, similar to Peddler's Daughter with the thing. Yes, Alderman Moore.
A couple questions. Why can't Peddler's Daughter use the bridge?
They can use the bridge.
They can?
Yes.
Do we need to include that in this?
It's already been worked.
Okay, all right.
And if I could speak to that?
Yes, why don't you speak to that? Thank you.
And it's because there's a fine line as to the role of the Board of Aldermen as opposed to the Board of Public Works.
Correct.
And what they have jurisdiction over. And the Board of Public Works, I've had conversations with them, they've not in the past, but they are, speaking to the Director of Public Works, she's open to the idea and to allowing for some sort of dining on the bridge, because that's the right of way in that area.
And I'm glad to hear that because the owner was very upset that we took space away.
This has Mr. Keneally, his approval. Yes, he would like to have on-street, but he realizes the traffic jam. And when explained to him, he is as much as a valuable citizen and willing to yield and make the compromise, to which he did. And I thank him for it. But he understands that created a traffic backup. By freeing up that intersection, and we could talk to the traffic engineer, Dan Hudson is on the line, and we could bring him in the future. But basically, as with conversations with the police chief, is we feel that this will eliminate the northbound congestion.
Oh, yeah, I think a lot of people are on board with that
Correct.
one. The last follow-up question I have for now. You're saying this yellow space is a chicken restaurant?
Yes.
Is it new?
Right here.
No advertising during meetings.
Right here.
But-
This area.
But do they need the space is what I'm getting at?
So I want to be clear, there's going to be no proposed extended outdoor
No,
dining.
oh, because it says public seating area,
Yeah, not, right
highlighted in yellow.
Yeah, this is for the narrowing of Main Street. So I don't believe that there'll be any extended outdoor dining where if you can see my arrow right here.
I hear you, but the key at the bottom says public seating area. So that's what caught me off guard. I just see the yellow.
I understand.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, and to facilitate the conversation, we are looking for this year and this year only. And I don't think any additions are going to be done to this, other than the automatic changes. So therefore, next year's project, they'll have to make the proper inquiries and so that it could be planned around. Okay? Alderman Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify to what Alderman Moran was speaking. The public seating, there are benches that are there.
I see.
And I think that's what was being referenced, was that there's a little bit of public seating kind of in that area, not outside dining.
I'm glad you were here, Alderman.
Yeah. And I want to refer back to Director Cummings just to make sure what I said was accurate.
Yes, and Alderwoman Clee actually said what I was about to say to clarify. So.
Yeah, okay. One-sided, okay. We'll start here, Alderman Dow.
I just want to point out that if you go back up, that restaurant on the west side across from Peddler's has a deck in the back for outdoor dining.
Down here.
Yes, thank you, Alderman Dow, yeah. Alderman Cathy, you had your hand up?
He answered my question. So
Answered, okay. Alderman Clay.
I apologize.
We are on a roll here.
I know, and I apologize. It speaks to this and to the next area. I know when we see the next area, we're not going to see barriers there. So the shrinking here or the narrowing here, if you could explain why the need when there's not going to be barriers in the next block. I think everybody would appreciate to hear that. Thank you.
Yes, and actually, Dan Hudson, the city engineer, is on, so he could probably speak to this in better detail than I could. But it's my understanding in speaking with him that from a public safety perspective, it is the preference and the recommendation to start prior to the street light, the traffic light that is, at the intersection of Water and Main, to start the quote-unquote narrowing, doing it post that traffic light would cause some conflicts because you'd have the lane end, and the lane would end in a certain area that would not allow the traffic to move back over with probably enough time or with enough from a safety perspective. So that's why the narrowing needs to occur before the traffic light.
Mr. Hudson, are you on?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and Michaela, can you give, if you haven't already, Mr. Hudson, the city engineer, access to chime in at any particular time, because I consider him, part of this discussion. So if you could do that, please. All right. Do you have a comment on that lane droppage at Canal and Main?
Sure. I'll just make a couple points to clarify. The that seating area that we were just talking about, that's a right turn lane normally during the rest of the year. So and then there's 2 through lanes. In order to block one of the through lanes, it makes sense to close the right turn lane and then convert one of the through lanes to a right turn lane. So that's what that figure reflects. The reason to do it there is we need to do a merge. So you have 2 lanes of traffic merging into one. You need to do that with some cones, barrels, that type of thing. It takes a little bit of a space. The next logical place to do it would be at an intersection of Factory Street. That's not a great place because Factory Street's one way. So you can't, for instance, turn one of the through lanes into a right turn lane there because they're not allowed to make that right turn. And you also don't want to do the merging in that block because then you have cones or barrels trying to create that merge, and they're conflicting with parking or other operations there. So it made sense to us at each end of Main Street to try to do the merge in the least impactful area in terms of impacts to abutting uses. And so that's why it's done on the bridge on approach to Water Street.
Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hudson, if I could clarify a couple of things, or maybe just help me understand. I understood the need for the traffic calming when, in previous versions of the plan, when the barriers extended all the way to Water Street. But if my understanding is correct of the next block, we're not having barriers until we get almost all the way to Factory Street anyway. So I understand what you just said, but I'm having a hard time understanding why we can't narrow to one lane, approaching Factory Street. If the idea is that doing it here will keep the traffic from backing up down there, isn't it just gonna back up to Canal Street here? You're just moving it a block further north. The right turn onto Water Street won't be an issue at the Factory Street intersection because those people will have already exited to the right at Water Street.
I mean, if you don't provide any traffic calming in that block between Water Street and Factory Street, then we're doing a lane. If we do the lane merge where I suggest, then you have one lane through and then you open up to 2 lanes and then it converges back to 1 lane. So that's what we don't want to do. I see what you're saying, that a fair amount of traffic probably does turn right onto Water Street. So you're suggesting that merging from 2 lanes to 1 lane at Factory Street might be possible. I would just say that, again, in order to do that, we need to put some barrier or cones to create that merge. And that's going to necessitate doing that barreling and coning across parking spots, effectively blocking those. So there would be an area where you'd be creating a merge, you'd be dropping the lane, and that would be happening in front of the parking spots right in front of businesses versus parking spots on the bridge. So we just felt it was made more sense to block parking spots on the bridge than block spots in front of businesses.
If I can follow up, Mr. Hudson, I wasn't suggesting going to 1 lane and then back to 2 and then back to 1. I'm just suggesting that maybe we can just wait to go to 1 until we get closer to Factory Street. And I understand your point about putting barrels or cones out in that block between Water and Factory, but my understanding is we're going to be doing that anyway because those parking spaces are supposed to still be available. So we're going to have some sort of cones or barrels on that block anyway. So I'm just failing to see why we have to do the traffic calming north of Water Street if there's not going to be any barriers until we get to Factory Street anyway.
Yeah, I understand the point you're making, and, and it's, the trade-off is what I said. If there's any spot, we may need to block some spots to create the merge closer to factory, but if that's the task force's will or wish, I don't believe I have any objection to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, I wasn't sure how to raise my hand on this. I just wanted to point out that it may not be a good idea to block parking on Factory Street particularly, because that is where a lot of the parking is contested, and business owners have been pretty clear that they would like to remove it.
That's not what you're saying, right?
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you. To add to Mr. Hudson's kind of conversation about the trade-offs, I can speak from experience as far as driver behavior goes in that area. Oftentimes what you have is people coming south on Main Street who have got the green light at Canal, and they're trying to get through to the next light. And it creates a challenge at the crosswalk there. When the farmer's market was on the bridge, I sat there for many, many hours and watched people almost get dinged there. And so with that in mind, I think from a driver behavior standpoint, it also makes a lot of sense in addition to the trade-off in terms of like what you're blocking off. Because if you calm the traffic as people come to kind of this north entrance to the dining zone, then you get people in that state of mind as they're approaching the subsequent blocks. And so that's just another piece that I think is worth raising. For the Leighton House, it's just worth noting, there's a couple of parking spaces, maybe 6 or so in front of the building that are dedicated to that building.
Okay.
So they do have some of their own dedicated parking. I want to say it's signed to indicate like it's the nighttime that they claim the spot. It's like a bit of a give and take to help benefit the businesses that operate during the daytime. But they do have that going for them. And I have a question for Mr. Hudson, if I may.
Yes, you may.
So,
Mr. Hudson.
So in front of USA Chicken and Biscuit, it's going to be a great business. So we have this area here, and we have this giant sign, and I have to wonder. I've spent too much time looking at the MUTCD handbook. I have to wonder because of I had to do flagging training and all of this stuff with staff for events and things. In any case, so Mr. Hudson, can we satisfy MUTCD standards for this merger without having a giant sign that looks like a construction zone?
We had a couple signs. We had a message board, I think, the last 2 years explaining that there were lane reductions to support outdoor dining, as well as a merge sign, and then some barrels, basically to create the merge, and then barrier. So yeah, I understand. It looks a little bit like construction zone, but
sorry to interrupt. The one sign in particular that I'm talking about is I think it's like an 8-foot by 10-foot message board sign. Can we satisfy the objectives with some alternate choice, or the complete removal of those signs at the north and south entrance to this area?
I believe it probably can. We do need the appropriate merge signs to give advance warning of the fact that there is a lane drop. But I believe we could do that without the large message boards.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I don't know if I know that this is kind of laid out and we're not trying to nitpick on items. I just that one particular thing, I don't know if there's an opportunity to discuss that and the will of this group. So these message board signs, they're 8 foot tall by 10 feet wide. They have lights on them that light up and say outdoor dining, road, two-way traffic, something like that. But it's 6 times the size of this television, and it's not a very welcoming sight. And I think from a perception standpoint and public feedback about the atmosphere that the signage produces, and concerns that it looks like a construction zone or a war zone or a whatever, I feel that if we can take these signs out, as they're the first thing that you see when you come downtown, and it looks, when you see it from 200 feet away, it looks like you're coming onto the overhaul of 495. And so if we can take that and get rid of them, you know, I don't know if we can have a discussion.
I understand where you're going, but you know, those signs you're talking about,
Yeah.
I think we own them.
Yeah.
And so that means to get something else would be a burden on the taxpayers.
So, Mr. Hudson, if I could ask a follow-up question, would you see a large material cost in an advance lane merger sign above and beyond maybe a couple of $100s? Because my understanding is it would be a diamond-shaped sign, standard size, and what I'm not talking about replacing them with something fancier and full color and advertisements panning through. I'm more so talking about replacing something that probably costs a lot to deploy, costs a lot to maintain, costs a lot in terms of keeping the power going on it for 8 months out of the year or 6 months out of the year. Mr. Hudson, would it be a simple diamond-shaped advance merger notice sign that you would need?
Yeah, there's yes, that's correct. That the MUTCD provides specific layout for a merge sign, and that's what we would use, just the standard sign. And then also, if we change the lane configuration, which we do by dropping a right turn lane, or actually dropping a through lane, then we would have a lane use sign as well. And we had all those signs last year. I think what you're suggesting is simply removing the large message board sign, which really is supplemental to the other regulatory signs. But you know, the nice thing about the message board, it is big. You can see it from a long ways away too. But we're coming on the 3rd year into this, so I think people are familiar with the pattern. I don't think it's going to catch anyone by surprise.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
The recommendation from you is to try to get by without the message board.
Yes.
Okay, I'll write that down.
Thank you.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Shea, and I think one of the things that people had a problem with is the appearance of the downtown, and I think those message boards are a detriment as far as visual acuity. So I would agree with him that we should, to all extents possible, get rid of those signs and come up with better alternatives. And I guess if that's going to be addressed as part of this, we should probably make that as one of the suggested changes to map 1 when we move on to map 2.
Agreed. These are transient signs. We could put them in like this if we need them. Alderman Como?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. To follow up with what Alderman Dowd and Commissioner Shea were just saying, a question for you as far as the process. If we have suggestions for each particular map, are you looking for motions to
Oh, yeah, we're going to have to vote on.
Are we going to do that all at the end, or is that something that
No,
would be appropriate
no,
now?
I want each section approved and get to the final goal. I mean, we have people here, you know, I'm not trying to push this through fast, but we have citizens who are donating their time.
Sure, I agree.
And we got to be aware of that in all courtesy. So my objective is to get it done accurately and correctly And so that's why.
So if a motion is in order, then I would move to remove the
So noted.
message board signs from the north and south end of Main Street.
Discussion on the motion.
I think,
Alderman Godeva.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with the past speakers. When I put my marketing cap on, it definitely looks a lot better without the big signage board, and you can do something a little bit better, in my opinion, and I think this would adequately.
Any other discussion on the motion? Alderman Jettie.
I think the message is no to the message board.
That's why I'm getting it. Alderman Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question to Commissioner Shea. Since you have familiarity with Great American Downtown, do you think that they may have any interest in supplying a prettier sign, so it's not a taxpayer expense?
Alderman Kathy, there's a motion.
Yeah, my apologies.
And with discussion, the motion, not seeking funding.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
Ms.
and
Smith.
I don't, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have to speak directional mic, so you gotta make sure it's.
I very much agree with that, but I also, while we're on the issue, we had a lot of orange barrels everywhere. And is that something we can add to that motion? Or do we need a second motion?
We could ask that question to Mr. Hudson. Do you need barrels?
You don't need barrels per se. I mean, we do need to emerge. What I would like is something that's reflective at night. There are other ways to do that. You can do that with reflective tape on a different type of device. But we do need something that people can see at night that identifies the pattern and the hazard per se of the corner of the barrier. We want to make sure that's visible.
Good.
Okay, so just so my complete understanding, will you need barrels at first and then looking for something better, or we don't need the barrels?
What we have done each year is put a barrel at the beginning of each run of barrier to provide that reflective eyes visible warning. So it doesn't have to be a barrel, but if we need something, I would recommend that we do something similar, something reflectorized.
Okay.
I don't know what that is other than some other type of barrel or cone or something that's a little more attractive.
Yeah, Director Cummings, do you have a clarification?
I do, but I didn't know if a question was going to be asked because I can wait till after the question's asked.
Okay, well, all right, we'll take the question. Ms. Smith.
Yeah, so is this something that we can put reflective material on the barriers and have it be all one uniform?
We have a motion for us. Now, if you want to put no barrels as part of your amendment, make that an amendment to no message board and limited use of the barrels. I will accept that as a motion. Amendment to the motion.
And I can answer the question that was just raised, because that's
there you go. Okay, please answer it.
So, if it's the pleasure of this body, I had showed some examples of what the New Jersey barriers could look like. And we specifically showed an example with a white stripe of reflective tape on the barrier that would satisfy, I believe, Engineer Hudson's concerns and would address the aesthetics issues. So if we end up going with the New Jersey barriers, it would be the intention of Director Photo and I, who I actually had a conversation with about this just this morning. We would be looking to add that reflective tape onto every single barrier, as well as painting the barriers a solid color. I know we're going to discuss this later on in the agenda, so
right.
I'll leave my comments there, but our intention would be to replicate what was in the Word document that I sent around, which is a solid color, royal blue, dark navy blue, something of that ilk, with a white stripe as previously presented.
So, Ms. Smith, do you have an amendment to limit the use of barrels?
Yes.
Okay. And, yes, Director Shea, Commissioner Shea.
Discussion on the amendment?
Yes, we'll treat it as a separate amendment, and then we'll go into your amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Discussion on limited use of barrels.
Yes, if I may.
Yes, you may.
So last year we had kind of this bike lane. My understanding is we're not having the bike lane, is that correct? And there are 42-inch grabber looper cones with some retroreflective tape around the top that I think are MUTCD certified devices. And I would further elaborate on this, that we still have those, is that correct? Yeah. And is there an intended use for those without? Okay. And so my suggestion would be to, in addition to, I think the reflective tape is a great solution, and it reduces the amount of devices that you have to maintain and make sure that that they're not, that's a fixed thing as opposed to a parking cone that could walk away by some reckless youth in the middle of the night. But in any case, I think wherever we can deploy those as an alternate to the barrels as well would be a great use of resources that we already have.
Okay. Well, we're getting to that. Before we start saying specific brands and other different things, I would like to leave it up to the experts. You know what I mean? It's, and that is the traffic engineer. So I think we can send a direction of what we want and let him determine the particular product that may be of the best. But we can put that into the motion equally as well. So I will entertain that no message board, limited use of barrels with the, how should I say it? Focusing on the safety and safety recommendation of the traffic engineer. If that would, somebody wants to entertain that. Unless you have something better, Alderman Doe.
We have to act on the amendment to the original motion and then act on the amended motion.
I'm kind of hoping if without objection, we can handle this one whole thing. All right, we'll do it. All right, you want, so we'll call like limit on the barrel use? All those, any other further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, going with no message board.
That's, no, the amended motion now is the message boards and the barrels.
And the barrels, okay. But I would like to, if, since we have that further amendment, at the discretion of the safety engineer, too. He is our expert.
Yes, of course.
So, okay. So all those in favor of putting in the, yes, Director Cummings.
I just want to clarify, are we speaking to this current motion for just this specific map, or is it going to be throughout the entire, all four maps?
I'm willing to entertain this to go all completely through.
I just want to make sure I understand the will of
I mean, once we solve a problem, I'm not gonna reopen up the, so, I believe in efficiency. So if we get this tackled, we see identifying the same problem somewhere else, we'll go. So, any discussion on that, to have the, I don't know exactly what I said, but basically.
The message boards removed as well as.
Yeah, that's a pending
reducing the
motion.
barrels.
Yeah, but all at the recommendation of the traffic engineer for safety purposes.
And throughout the entire.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So first, would it be like get a vote on the recommendation of the traffic engineer to input?
That's a given.
Huh?
That's a given. They own the
That's a
street.
given. Okay, then I'll call no message boards with the traffic engineer's input for the safety purposes. I'll call that vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other on map one? Yes,
I'd like to make a motion to accept the changes or lack of changes to map 1 and to move on to map 2.
okay. Okay, discussion on the motion?
I don't want to do that. I have another comment.
You have a comment? I will allow the comment. Go ahead. You're new to this.
I mean, we're
Closer to the
accepting
mic.
this, I'm sorry. We're accepting this traffic calming thing before we've actually done the other maps and assumed that, and figured out whether or not we need traffic calming. Because I don't think that we should be assuming that we're gonna have extended dining until we get to those maps. We just listened to a whole bunch of citizens who said they don't want extended dining, so I'm not sure why this body is assuming we're gonna have extended dining. I think that's a pretty big assumption.
Director, my co-chair, yes.
I think it was the vote of the last meeting that we approved 2 lanes, which is.
That's correct.
In essence, extended outdoor dining.
Well, it didn't say accepting, it said 2 lanes. So if you want to have 2 lanes and not have extended outdoor
I see,
dining,
I see.
okay, you might want to change that afterwards.
Yes,
if you
I
vote
understand
against it.
that,
But I don't think that that vote was us approving extended outdoor dining.
Got it. I hear that, yes.
Okay.
All right. You do have the right to vote on this whole thing when we come down to the end, too, as the whole process. Who had their hand up? Commissioner Shea, was it you? Or?
Yeah, it's probably superfluous. I just want to note that, like, as a group, we're making a recommendation to this joint committee that will meet after us, who will then vote to put it to the Board of Aldermen, who will vote on it. So our action at the last meeting is not like the de facto ultimate approval of outdoor dining extension. It's just an approval of the conditions under which we're discussing this concept, and then ultimately voting on whether or not to approve the concept, just for additional clarity. Is that about right?
Yes, it is. Okay. Thank you. All right, we have a pending motion. And the pending.
Still discussing the motion?
I haven't called for discussion yet.
Okay.
But Alderman Moran, can you discuss your, can you just reiterate your motion, please?
I would like to make a motion to accept the changes that we've just made.
As amended.
As amended to, what are we calling this, map 1? And then move on to map 2.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Alderman Como.
Well, I was hoping to make a motion myself regarding the traffic calming measures, but instead I will make a motion to amend Alderman Moran's motion to remove the traffic calming measures ahead of Water Street and relocate those further south to wherever traffic determines they're most necessary before Factory Street.
I think that's a separate, you can do whatever you want, whatever this body wants, but I think you just mixed gasoline and matches. I don't know. See, the thing is, it's,
we can't approve this map if I have a
okay,
suggestion
then
to modify this map.
Alderman Moran, can you withdraw your motion so this can get vetted, please? Thank you. All right. Go ahead, make your motion.
All right, then I would make a motion to remove the traffic calming measures north of Water Street and relocate those south onto the next block at a location to be determined by the traffic engineer.
Discussion on the motion, Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, could whoever's controlling the map, could you show
That's Director Cummings.
The next block so we can see where these, see where the traffic calming
I think he
would
wants
begin.
map 2 if you can.
No, that's fine. That's right there.
Yeah.
So through you, Mr. Chair, could I ask Mr. Alderman Como where he thinks the traffic calming would begin and what would they look like?
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If my understanding is correct, that length of the west side of Main Street, there aren't going to be any barriers there. So my concern is with the narrowing of Main Street north of Water Street, we've unnecessarily restricted traffic in an area that we know is congested. And if I recall correctly, Commissioner Shea, you spoke to the traffic conditions of people coming off of Canal Street turning left. A good majority of those, from my anecdotal experience, are turning onto Water Street anyway. So if we can keep that intersection flowing, I feel like it would be, to the betterment of the situation. And I believe even Mr. Hudson, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but when we were discussing this a couple of minutes ago, I thought he said that if we determine that was the right thing to do to move it closer to Factory Street, that they would not have an issue with that. But again, I don't want to put words in his mouth either. Just looking at the map, I feel like there's an opportunity where we don't have barriers until almost the very end of that block to narrow the lanes further south somewhere in that area. Okay. And that's why I said in my motion, at a location determined by the traffic engineer.
All right, Director Cummings.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the comment. I believe what City Engineer Hudson said is that there would be a potential of loss of parking spaces in front of some businesses if we were to go in this direction, and the committee just needs to be cognizant of that. And if they're willing to have that trade-off, then yes, this would be something that you could do. I wouldn't begin to suggest where those parking spaces would be at this time. I would want to consult with, Mr. Hudson.
I see you, Tommy.
I would want to consult with Mr. Hudson, but yes, that's essentially what would happen.
Yeah. At this particular time, I do have a couple Alderman Lopez and then Alderman Clay. But I want to give the opportunity to the expert, our traffic engineer, Mr. Hudson. Would you like to divulge on the matter?
I think my previous statements were summarized correctly. If we're going to do a merge, that takes some space with the, it won't be barrels, but we'll use something else to develop that merge. And then we need to sign that in advance. So you're probably going to lose a few parking spots at the point of the merge, and then also where we place the advanced warning signs. So that's the trade-off, and I agree with Mr. Cummings. I would need to go back and take some time and try to draw that up and see exactly what the impact is.
Okay. Alderman Lopez.
I just wanted to put maybe more of an exclamation point on my concerns from earlier. That block would literally be the block that has been petitioning heavily against removing their parking. So I don't think we're doing them any favors to say, okay, well, we're going to reduce the extended outdoor dining programs in all of these different areas and go through this whole process and then say, but we're going to put a lane merger in front of your store instead, because those businesses are Sub-Zero's on the corner of it. Then there's the, I think it's Fiesta Pizza, then the Flight Center, and then Wingate. So that block has been pretty clear that they would like minimal disruptions. The plan does include parking for them. So the previous block seems like it's a more logical place to put any kind of traffic calming stuff if it's going to obstruct parking.
Thank you, Alderman Clay.
Thank you. Kind of going back and forth between map 1 and map 2. One of the things I think that people are forgetting in map 2 is that there are some traffic calming type of things there that when I first made my comment, I was thinking that the traffic was going to go from 1 lane back to 2 lanes, not realizing until I just looked at it again that there's actually a barrel that's right there by Sub-Zero with a if you look at the map, it just talks about the zone layout. So it's got like a little orange dot and the blue line, and that goes all the way up to. I'm trying to think here. It's must be past is that San Francisco Kitchen or the Garden or up that way there. So you'll see that there's 2 there. My anxiety about that is I realized why we did that was so that we could get cars to kind of come in and go into that parking area. But my fear is that what cars are going to do is they're going to narrow, they're going to go past the barrel, get back in, and then come back out. But I think that's the best we can do so that we don't lose these parking spaces. So I think we do need the calming. It kind of gets people down to one lane there. They're going to come across the barrels. Yes, they may go back into that other lane, but they're going to see the barrel that they're going to have to come out again. And it's going to be slow traffic in that area, so it's not like they're going to be up to speed. So I would recommend that you keep that traffic calming there, just my opinion, because the next section is going to show barrels. I know you got rid of the barrels, but they're going to have to put something else there, so.
Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't want to get too far ahead into map 2, but part of my concern regarding the traffic calming measure that we can see in map 1 is that most of the length of this block is not going to have extended outdoor dining, and it's supposed to be available for parking, and I'm still having a hard time understanding how we're going to do both, how we're going to have cars getting into those parking spaces if this section of the road is only 1 lane. So we've reduced it down to 1 lane coming south, and presumably we have some sort of infrastructure there, be it cones or barrels, limiting that to 1 travel lane heading south, but there's going to have to be some sort of openings to allow access into the parking areas. So it just doesn't make sense to me if we're trying to keep that length of the road open to close it ahead of that block and then introduce a more complicated system than just not doing anything until we get to the point where the barriers are gonna start. And that way you've got 2 lanes and you've got all your traffic available and it's not, some complicated system.
If I may, Mr.
Yes, you may.
So I just want to kind of just drill into this a little bit so folks can just follow my arrow. So under the current scenario, what you won't be able to do is continue on through the intersection and travel straight because this is a barrier right here. You're going to be forced to move into this lane here, which if you wanted to park, you'd travel here through this lane and go into the parking here. And we do that because what we don't want to do is encourage people to travel in this lane here because what will inevitably happen is they're going to be forced into another lane, and that would be an unsafe condition.
Can I ask Mr. Cummings a question?
Yes, you may.
If, Mr. Cummings, if I understand this map correctly, you've got one barrier there and then you're anticipating not having anything south of that barrier?
No, there's another one.
So what's to stop traffic from passing the barrier and then immediately moving into the right travel lane and continuing traveling?
Right, we want to we don't want that to happen. We're
But
gonna
if
try
there's nothing there blocking that lane off, then that's what people are gonna do.
Well, our hope is people will respect this barrier and try to travel here.
So you don't anticipate having cones down the length of that or anything?
Because we want to open it up for parking.
Right, but so I don't see how both things are going to work. That's why I just figure if you remove the traffic calming device from north of Water Street and you remove that barrier that you just had your mouse on, and we just do the lane reduction further down the block, then there's no worry about will people adhere to what they're supposed to or will they not. It'll just be a 2-lane road until it's not.
So I would like to back that conversation up a little bit and just have a conversation about how fast do you want people to travel on your main street?
Right.
So what this condition does, tries to create a condition where vehicles will slow down. And if you're not interested in doing that and you want the speeds to stay at a higher volume and have the capacity to process, you could absolutely go in the direction you're suggesting.
I don't think that it's a matter of the speed of the vehicles. I think it's human nature. As soon as drivers pass that barrel and they no longer see barrels, cones, barriers, to what looks to, an everyday driver like an open lane, they're gonna use it as an open lane without infrastructure there to guide them otherwise.
The chair would like to facilitate what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a debate at this particular point. It's supposed to be a discussion on the pending motion. So, do you have a further question on the pending motion?
No, sir.
Okay. Alderman Kathy.
I do have a question. Mr. Cummings, that second barrier in the middle, that's right around where the sidewalk bump out is for the crosswalk, correct?
Yep.
Is there any way that we could utilize that bump out as the area where we would then merge traffic into one lane because it's already sort of out? It's not taking away parking, so we could put a barrier a few feet before that and then get them to merge into that one lane?
I hear what you're saying. This is what I would want to have a conversation with Mr. Hudson on to see if doing what you're saying would be something like this. That is a potential option, yes. That's something we would study.
Yes. Commissioner Shea.
So I don't know that folks are hearing that Mr. Hudson has told us that there is a certain distance with which you standardize a merger of lanes. Should we want to, and we're achieving that by way of what's at the bridge, and we're doing so in a lane that is otherwise a turning lane and not parking. We're achieving that in a way that does not disrupt parking. If we are to take that traffic direction away from the bridge and move it further down the road, because of the standards of mergers, and it's different depending on the speed of a road. But what Mr. Hudson is telling us is that if we move it up the road because of those standards, we are going to lose parking spaces. And we are not going to achieve any additional traffic flow because we get down, at least not on this block, because we get down here and we're still at one lane once you get to the intersection. So that's for this block. Another, just to kind of call back to my commentary from earlier, it's not the cars that are coming off of Canal Street because they are already going slow that is a concern for me. They're already going slow, they're taking left turn. It's cars that have started up at Amherst Street, have the green light, see green light number 2 as they come onto the bridge, and then see green light number 3 and know that it's probably gonna turn yellow because you don't get that luck again and again and again with all these green lights. They speed up as they come onto the bridge to try and make sure that they make it through a third light. So it's not Canal Street that I'm concerned about. It's coming down from Amherst Street and having your traffic calming before that third light does the intended effect. And it does so without disrupting parking, and I would not support the motion.
Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, so I think I understood Engineer Hudson to say that he cannot accomplish what Alderman Como is requesting without taking away parking between water and factory. So, for that reason, I would vote against Alderman Como's motion about removing the traffic calming in front of Darrell's. I just can't, I can't agree to give up the parking that we've gained here with this compromise.
Alderman Cathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Mr. Hudson could entertain us and answer my previous question to Mr. Cummings about utilizing the bump out without taking away parking to merge that lane of traffic, because obviously I wouldn't want to give up parking either. So I'm seeing if we can maybe 2 birds, 1 stone, because the bump out's already coming out. If we put a barrier close enough to the bump out, we don't lose the parking. The barriers are already going to be there anyway. I don't know if he can answer that question or give us some insight.
Right. Mr. Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think there's quite enough room there between the parking and the crosswalk to try to create that merge. That would be in the section to the south there. I think you were talking about the mid-block crosswalk between water.
That's correct.
And factory. So I think you would lose some parking to the north of that crosswalk. Clearly, we don't want to be merging across the crosswalk. If we can avoid that, we want to do it either side. So I still would say, you certainly could do a merge somewhere in that block, maybe at the end or maybe before that crosswalk. But we would need to place a merge sign and then some channelizing device to create that merge. So you're going to lose some parking in that block if that's where we do the merge.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Alderman Dow.
Just a question for Mr. Hudson. I have never liked the left-hand turn off of Main Street onto Water Street. Could we, for the duration of the outdoor dining, make that a through travel lane and no left turn? And, there are other
Alderman
ways to
Dow,
get
we
to
have
Water
a
Street.
pending motion, and it's discussion on the motion.
It was just a question, not part
No, I understand that, but it may be brought up at a later date. Seeing comments are pretty much done, the chair wants to remind everybody, do you know why you're here? You're here because one particular block brought into question, and that's what the city engineer has brought to our attention and what he tried to say. It seems to block around the Whitney Pharmacy, the block with card and jewelers and everything wanted something. And I think Director Cummings, the city engineer, and the city departments went through great pains to come up with this particular compromise. And so we have guaranteed to those particular businesses here that they will have what they traditionally used to as the parking spaces in front of their business. By moving, this is the chair's opinion, in my opinion only, that if we move the barriers, then we jeopardize the compromise that we have worked very hard to come and bring at this particular meeting. So I will not be voting for this in favor. Any other further discussion on the motion? Because I'm seeking to move the motion if no other discussion. Okay, can the chair, clerk please read the motion?
So the motion was to remove the traffic calming measures from the Water Street intersection and move them further south towards Factory Street at a location to be selected by the traffic engineer.
Okay, all those in favor, I'm gonna call for a hand vote just to make sure, I'm sure we're split on this. All those in favor signify aye by raising your hand. Oh, excuse me, yeah, Mike, what I'm doing. One. All those against the motion, raise your hand. Thank you. The nays have it, the motion fails.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, now we recognize Alderman Moran, I think, for another motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we have completed map 1 and to move on to map 2, which we've kind of already moved on to.
Very good. There is a motion to accept as amended map 1 and to move on, new discussion on map 2. Any discussion on that motion?
I'd like to amend that motion to say that if something changes in a further map that might affect where the calming measures need to be, that we revisit map 1.
I think that goes without saying.
Does it?
Yeah, we're gonna look at, that's why we broke it down into integral parts. You know, so there'll be other motions on each particular part. And it follows along with what Director Cummings said. We can use that as a guidelines, we're trying to explain as we move forward. We're building templates. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to map 2.
Was there a nay? 2?
Two nays.
All right, Mr. Chair, if you'd like,
You're not sleeping back there, right?
No, I am not. I am happy to walk through map 2. Map 2, as we've already previously discussed, is one of the bigger changes that have taken place where we removed all the barriers. In and along the west-hand side of the main street, we have some barriers for traffic calming measures put in place with the idea of we would be narrowing Main Street and yet still providing opportunity for parking along the western side of Main Street. The green represents like a 15-minute drop zone type parking. The orange represents that traditional 90-minute. On the east side, no real changes other than we created some additional parking here with that green spot. I had previously mentioned that we would try to make this 2 spots and wanted to just reiterate that. So I know the map doesn't necessarily show that, but that's something that we would look to design this so we could drop this barrier maybe at a more at a 90-degree angle or something to that effect to try to get 2 spaces in here, more so than the 1 space that's currently shown. Otherwise, here on Factory Street, I want to note that we had some conversations about the traffic calming with the concrete barrier that was put in place right here. We removed that. Otherwise, the orange represents that 90-minute zone 1. The green represents the 15-minute drop zone. We're creating this parking that otherwise is not allowed. We do have a restaurant that's come in that recently asked for some extended outdoor dining. In looking at it, what we have tried to do is, if it's the pleasure of this committee, is to add in some New Jersey barriers, right what my cursor is showing, appropriately 2-3 parking spaces right in through here, whatever was safe to create that extended outdoor dining per the now open restaurant's request. No changes on Temple Street in terms of what was there previously. This is essentially what was there last year. We would just be duplicating it again. That's all I have at this time.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Director Cummings and to my president, Wilshire. I think after we come to this, any future changes would be made by the Committee of Infrastructure. Correct, is at this new restaurant, if they decide to come into late on the process, that would be reviewed by the Committee of Infrastructure, correct?
I can answer that. So, Mr. Chair, it would be allowable if this resolution is adopted by the full body. The resolution contains language that if a recommendation by the parking manager, director of public works, this body so suggested, then the mayor would then be empowered to make said changes. So if you wanted to entertain those after this resolution is adopted, subject to the fact that that language stays into this resolution, then that could happen after the fact.
All right, in case I lose track of it, can somebody remind to put that into the final motion of approval of MAP Section 2? Okay, asking the favor. Alderman Kathy.
Mr. Chair, just a clarifying question. You just asked President Wilshire if you would talk about that dining in the infrastructure committee, but would it not be the joint committee, or would it just be infrastructure?
Infrastructure's in charge. Infrastructure was in charge of this since the beginning. But because it crossed some barriers into PEDC, we incorporated. But we're not, at the end of this task force, and at the end of the vote of this committee, the joint committee will arise at that point.
But then
it'll go back
the joint
to the
committee,
separate committee.
it'll go to the board.
It'll go to the board,
Okay,
correct.
so it's not just infrastructure, it'll be the joint committee.
That's the recommendation of the joint committee will go to the full board of Aldermen.
Okay, I just want to.
That's the phrase, yes.
If I may?
If you may.
If we're talking about MAP 2, I think now, since we're getting into real nitty-gritty dining, it would be the appropriate time to start discussing the space in front of the restaurants. There have been some requests that we only have barriers that take up the parking spaces in front of restaurants. I know that.
I have not seen that request. Where did that request come from?
Citizens who have businesses.
I have heard requests on the sidewalks. For clarification.
Right.
I have to ask you, are you claiming the property of the sidewalk in front of the business, or are you claiming parking space?
There
is a difference.
Right, I understand. I'll try to be more clear. Some businesses have requested that the parking in front of their businesses not be impeded by barriers.
I don't know. To me, that's Director Cummings, that comes under our perusal, what we allow. I mean, it's a city street.
Right, so I'm asking, can we discuss that?
City streets?
No, discuss who has barriers and where.
Do you want to make a motion so we can discuss it?
Yeah.
We could discuss it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that it would be fair to some businesses that restaurants do not get to utilize space in front of their businesses, because I understand there's a lot of parking. I understand there's a parking study. I understand that the study indicates that parking is not utilized 100%. I understand all that, but there are some customers who go to businesses and they park on Main Street. It's easily accessible for them, and those businesses are going to lose that spot for their customers if a restaurant is taking that parking space in front of their building. Now, I understand they don't own it. I get that. But I think it would be fair to, if you have a business, the park spaces in front of your business would be for your business. I think that if you guys think it's not fair, that's fine. I think it's at least worth a discussion. I'll put it that way.
Okay, and the discussion is you may penalize businesses because of the square footage on the sidewalk, correct?
It's a give and take, so that's why I'm having a discussion about it.
But understand, parking spaces does not follow the linear of the...
Not always, no, and there would have to be some
you do know
agreements. It's not like...
It's a skew to begin with anyways.
Right, but it's worth a discussion, I think.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Moore.
So I do think it is reasonable to have a conversation about that, whether it's the actual space, the parking space, or it's the space in front of the retailer or whatever other business that's not a restaurant. Going downtown, when you have the outdoor dining, as it was previously, maybe not in this current plan, like many businesses were blocked. You couldn't see. One example is right here. You're blocked by tables, and you had a little narrow way entry into their front door. I think maybe, I don't want to misrepresent everything Alderman Kathy had said, but maybe a little bit more space so it's very clear that their business is there and it can be accessed. I think there's a lot of concern about access.
Yeah. Before we get too much further, Alderman Kathy, I'll give you the opportunity. You want to put that into a motion? And the motion would be, if this is, you're in agreement, that the outdoor dining on the parking spaces would be limited to the size of the businesses. Or however way you want to. That way we could vote on it and put it to bed, whatever way this board decides.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion. Bear with me. I'm gonna make a motion that extended outdoor dining that utilizes barriers only be placed directly in front of the businesses that are using those barriers, with one caveat. If this committee votes no, I would like at least one more space for Glorious Possibilities, which Mr. Cummings has already talked about. So that would be like my compromise on that motion if there's a no.
I like to amend the
Yeah,
motion.
so go ahead, Director Cummings.
No, I heard that there might be an amendment.
I'd like to amend the motion.
Yeah, amend the motion.
I would like to amend that motion to include 2 spaces in front of Glorious Possibility and to allow the neighboring store to approve the space to be allowed in front of their business.
I was thinking about that. I didn't know when to bring it in, but yes, I like that.
Okay. Are we done? We got the motion? The clerk got it?
I'm still writing.
Oh, I know you are.
Sorry, Alex.
I don't know when to make the comment, but.
Well, I'm going to call on you in 1 second, Mary Lou, but Patience, thank you so much. You all set? Any questions from the clerk?
You can take discussion. I will
All
catch up.
right, Ms. Blaisdell.
I disagree, and I'll tell you why as a retailer. First of all, with all due respect to everybody's comments, I think that we're nitpicking a plan that experts have looked at. And we're gonna be here till Christmas.
Right.
We have, and I'll just say that, the experts have looked at calming measures, and they have walked up and down Main Street and talked to us. And we have expressed our opinions to them over and over on what works and what doesn't. And I think you need to be aware of that. I also think as a business owner, as a retail establishment, the barriers do a lot of positives. They calm traffic on Main Street. That's a huge positive. They bring, whether you can look at this report that our intern did last summer that says 6% utilization. You need to really look at those utilization per restaurant. You need to look at the time of days they were taken and the type of establishment. And if you look at those, you will see there was good utilization at many of those restaurants. Excellent. I know barriers in front of my establishment increase my business because it increases walking traffic downtown. Walking traffic is more revenue for restaurants, retailers, and businesses, which means we all stay in business, we all pay our property taxes, and the economy is strong. I really feel that this plan has been gone over and over and over with Director Cummings, with the city engineer, with fire, with police. We have listened, or they have listened, I haven't been in on those conversations, to people who want more parking in front of their establishment. I will come back to one of my original statements. It's not lack of parking downtown, it's lack of education or customers on where to park. And you had a gentleman this evening that said that. So I really would encourage us, if we're going to get through this, that we listen. We've had the plan, have been able to review it for weeks now. And I think that the negativity that's coming out about these barriers is, I truly don't understand it. It's positive for downtown. Just the whole work that the Economic Development Office and everybody is trying to do to move this along has, in my opinion, been very good. And those are my comments. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you. Alderman Moran.
I don't disagree with anything that you had previously said. I would just like to reiterate that the work that has been done thus far for the majority has been done by the executive branch, essentially the city, and we, the legislative branch, need to have our say too. That's why we get elected to vote, to represent these people that are here and who are not here.
Commissioner Shea.
If I had my druthers, we would go ahead and approve, like in cement, that there are gonna be 2 spaces in front of 100 Main Street, and that we not discuss any additional reduction in spaces, or moving of barriers. I've seen the plan, I know we've all received the plan. I would agree. For me, I think that is the only spot where it really makes sense. I think that there's been an excellent job done in terms of finding additional parking on Factory Street, in terms of identifying counter service businesses that truly aren't using the space that they were given between Water and Factory. But I am in agreement that there are 3 parking spaces between the crosswalk and the next lamppost. The first space is in front of 100 Main Street. The second space is in front of League of New Hampshire Craftsmen. And then the third space is kind of on the cusp of League of New Hampshire Craftsmen and Casa de Mezcal. And I think that if that barrier, is one third of the way in front of League of New Hampshire Craftsmen, and comes out, and then you have your diagonal around the post, and you can have a nice little nook of seating there, and plenty of additional seating, in addition to the great amount of seating that restaurant has, and have that remainder of space worked out between Giant of Siam and Casa Mezcal. I think that's a fine adjustment, and I'm in agreement with that piece of it.
Question to Director Cummings. Where the orange dot is there, didn't we just discuss increasing a parking space there?
Right here. Yep, that would be.
So would that satisfy Alderman Kathy's?
No, that's part of my amendment too.
It's part of the motion, but the motion was, if you're a retailer, you get the parking spaces in front of your retail establishment. I understand that some businesses may want dining in front of their establishments who are not dining. That's fine. That's within their right. That's their option to let a restaurant sit in front of their business if they want. That's the point. It's an option. But for those who do not want the dining in front of their establishment, they're not exercising that option, and they're getting the parking that they want for their businesses. That's kind of why they're there on Main Street, to have that parking. I think that's a good compromise.
I'm kind of confused because it's the street. Do you don't want red cars? I don't know.
I mean, your insurance is higher, so.
You know?
If I could,
yeah,
I just need to add some clarity to this. So I wanted to find an example that didn't involve a restaurant, but would illustrate the point. And so I just want to make sure people understand that when we laid out our parking spaces, we did not lay them out with an eye of where they end towards frontages. So you just need to be aware of the fact that it's not evenly distributed. So what I wanted to show you is, this is a good example. We have parking spaces and they're gonna overlap. This parking stall right here just happens to be right here. And, you know, I can't tell you that when we put the barriers up, we will do the best we can to respect that, but, you know, the frontages do not align. And when I say frontages, we're speaking to the store frontages, align neatly with the parking stalls that are laid out on Main Street. So I just want everyone to be aware of that fact.
Okay, that answers a lot of questions. Alderman Flake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things I want to point out, and Director Cummings, please correct me if I'm wrong. If, you know, there are others you're going to see in some of the other maps where they're able to separate them, but the end of the barriers or the beginning of the barriers sometimes taper in.
Correct.
And that barrier alone may take a space in front of a retailer. If we change that, then we're kind of getting into what would be considered the dining space. So to Ms. Blaisdell's comments, you know, this nitpicking of saying, put one here, you've already agreed to put those two there. If you continue to do this, you're never going to get this done, number one. And number two is you're going to really infringe on the restaurant parking that you're trying to do, because you're going to have to increase and decrease the barriers by the block. And I think without you physically sitting there and measuring it all out, I think this is something that maybe, as Director Cummings had kind of pointed out, changes as necessary to the economic director and to the mayor after this plan has been approved to maybe fix some of these issues, because I think this is just too
a program that's
nitpicky.
going to be tweaked and tweaked, yes. Nothing's etched in stone. But I'm going around the horseshoe here. We're starting here and we're coming around. Okay, who's next? Commissioner
Just
Shea, yes.
to further clarify my position, I will not support the motion. I will not support the amendment. But if given the opportunity, I would make a motion to preserve those two parking spaces. Thank you.
In front of Glory Possibilities, right?
Yeah, I think we've got to get through the amendment and the motion discussion.
That's correct.
But when we come,
Unless he withdraws them.
Yeah, but if we come back around to it, I will be interested in making.
I'll look to you to make a motion at that particular time. Mr. Jettie, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. You know, with all due respect to Ms. Blaisdell, she's been working on downtown Nashua. I just read a report within the last week where the city did a study of downtown Nashua 10 years ago. She was the chairman of the committee that worked on that plan. You know, some of the recommendations were adopted, some weren't. And you know, I fully respect your devotion to downtown, but you know, this committee is charged with going through this plan. I know we've had the plan for a lot of time, but this is the only time we've had a chance to discuss it. That's what we're doing tonight. So please let us talk about it. You know, I don't understand why a business would not expect to be able to use or not use the area in front of, you know, their frontage on Main Street. So the sidewalk and the parking spaces in front of their business, you know, ought to be, you know, if they choose to use them, that ought to be their choice. And, you know, if they can get their neighbor, the abutting property owner, to agree to let them use that space as well, you know, I think that's fine. But to deny a business owner a parking space in front of his business, I think is not fair. And to allow a restaurant that doesn't, you know, to extend their use of the sidewalk and the parking spaces in front of another business without that business's permission, I don't think is fair either. So I'm not sure about the the language that was used in the motion that's before us, but, you know, the concept, and I understand that parking spaces don't necessarily line up exactly with the frontage, but I think, you know, the language can be that, I would like the language, that when we finally adopt this ordinance, that there be language in there that no one has the right to use the sidewalk without a permit from, I think it's the Board of Public Works that issues permits for sidewalk use. And that, there's gonna be some adjustment, of whether their parking spot is right in front of their business or not. But I think that can all be worked out. But the general concept that, a business, can have the use of the sidewalk in front of their business, or allow an abutting restaurant to use it, I think that language ought to be adopted. And, the gentleman who is, I think, the manager, I'm not sure what his title is, from that Mexican restaurant, I'm not sure of the name because it keeps changing, but he said that he had no problem with allowing, the space in front of the League of Women, League of New Hampshire Craftsmen. That his restaurant was encumbering them, and he said we don't really need that space. I'm okay with giving that space. So I'm assuming that you remember that, and that's what you're working on with him. But I remember him very distinctly saying that he was willing to give up that space. So I don't know, I think that ought to be a done deal. So if I remember correctly, the motion before us is whether or not to limit the use of the sidewalks to the frontage of the business. And did it include abutting properties with the permission of the abutter?
I did correct that later, but I can restate it when it comes back around, just so it's clear.
So I'm in favor of that.
So can
I will have the motion read, but right now it's discussion on the motion. You're all set, Alderman Jettie?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Ms. Boland, you're all set?
Can I speak?
Director Cummings.
Yeah, I just want to provide some context. So the language that Alderman Jettie just raised, I want to make sure folks understand that the Board of Public Works, through the administration, the DPW administration, provides outdoor dining permits. And there's regulations that these entities have to adhere to. Previously, prior to COVID, there was a regulation that said that you needed to seek permission of your abutting neighbors if you wanted to have your outdoor dining in front of their quote-unquote frontage. When COVID came about, there was a change in that policy that allowed for the outdoor dining to occur without said owner's permission. What was found or discovered, and I leave it to others to decide whether this is true or not, but we had learned that there was a lot of neighborhood, if you will, issues where some neighbors didn't get along with other neighbors and they withheld this, which caused some angst and conflict that ran deep within the community. I know the Board of Public Works has studied this issue, and I think that they would continue to address this issue if they saw that there was a need. But technically, the policy of, or determination of where on the sidewalk, and the usage of the right-of-way for outdoor dining, that falls all within the purview of the Board of Public Works.
Correct. Okay, moving on, we're all set. Go ahead, Ms. Boland.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention during the development of this plan, as a Main Street business owner, nobody came to talk to me while it was being developed. So just put that out there, that I was not spoken to about the plan. We keep talking about reducing the speed on Main Street. So today when I got on Main Street on my way here, I put on my little GPS thing to find out what the speed limit was, because there's no signs. So my GPS says it's 25 miles an hour, which is probably too fast for Main Street. So maybe we should reduce the speed limit on Main Street and put up speed limit signs if we need to reduce the speed on Main Street. Just an idea, throw it out there while I'm thinking of it. And you come from Concord Street, which is 30 and does have a sign when you're entering Concord Street. You go to Main Street, nothing says the speed limit changes to 25. I kind of do feel like we need to do nitpicking at this point. That's kind of why we're here. And I do want to get things written down because I'm still waiting for a parking kiosk to be put back on my block. I was told a month ago after complaining since last fall that there's no parking kiosk. Still don't have it, still have people coming into my store going, I don't know what to do. I tried to load the app, it doesn't work. I don't know how to load the app. I mean, so anyway, so I like things to be written down. Like, I'd really like a parking kiosk there. I think there should be them on every block. If you take them off for dining, you need to put them back. And I want to point out that one of the things I'm going to talk about later in the discussion on the agenda is paying to have the space. So I think that whatever we approve needs to say what spaces are eligible for extended outdoor parking, dining, and not that they're going to be there, because we need to ask the restaurants if they want to pay whatever somebody decides that they're going to need to pay. So we might want to make that change. I don't want to see a bunch of barriers go up and then restaurants going, oh, I'm not paying that. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Buckley,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
and thank you for waiting.
Not a problem at all.
You had half the horseshoe to go through.
The process. I just wanted to make a comment to point something out that up to now has not really been pointed out. And I completely understand the comments of some of the retailers who want modifications. I've said I empathize with them all along. And if there's a couple of special cases that would like to be carved out for additional spaces, I think that can be handled. But I want to remind everybody that just because you have spaces carved out in front of your building doesn't mean those spaces will be utilized by your customers only. This is a downtown parking situation where if I want to go to Wingate's Pharmacy, but those parking spaces are full, I'm going to park in front of the barber, and the barber might park in front of the pharmacy. I think we're losing sight of the important thing. The idea was to listen to the people's concerns and give them more parking, because that's not going to guarantee their customers the use of that parking. We listened to their concerns and made adjustments to the plan to afford them more parking overall, and I think that's what's missing from this conversation. You, Tim and his team have done that. Giving anybody specific parking spaces, a restaurant person might park in front of their spaces. It doesn't really matter. What matters is, are we giving, I mean, it matters a little bit because it might once in a while be an opening in front of their spot where their customer can pull right in, but it's not going to happen very often. I think the big picture that we should be thinking about is the fact that we have given more parking, and I don't think that's been talked about, and I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Moving along, you all set? Alderman Dowd.
First of all, one of my concerns when we came into doing it again this year was ensuring that none of our small businesses were overly burdened by whatever we were doing. And I think, especially in this block, on the west side of this area, we've gone to great lengths to give all of those people the parking that they were asking for. And if there's other small businesses that feel that they want the parking space open in front of their business, I'm all for it. The restaurants should utilize the parking spaces in front of their restaurant. Now, if their neighbors say, fine, you can use the parking area or the sidewalk, we don't have a problem, we should have some way of getting them to sign off on that and making sure that everybody understands that they've agreed. But I think we've gone a long way to make a number of concessions. Some of the other things that I was concerned about was the appearance of things. We've got rid of the big mechanical signs. We got rid of the orange barrels, so it doesn't look like $4.95 every summer. And I think that some of the concerns people had were the fact that it looked like a construction zone. So we're taking effort to alleviate that. We had concerns about some of the small business, including the cobbler on Factory Street, and now there's parking in front of his place. So I think we've addressed a lot of the concerns that arose from previous years. I think that's a good thing. So if we've missed something and there's a business that we're blocking for some reason that we shouldn't because it's in front of their store and not a restaurant, I think we need to address that.
Alderman Gadeva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with my colleague from Ward 5 that it's just a lot of these businesses move downtown, and one of the perks is having that parking not if in front of your storefront, but at least generally in the same area, and allowing the business itself to say if they would like to keep that as parking spots, which yes is a risk. I definitely understand that. People could park there and walk right next to the outdoor dining spot 2 feet in front of it. But I feel it should be up to the storefront owner, and I'll be supporting the motion for that reason.
Alderman Cathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to Mr. Buckley's point, he is correct that, you know, some of us, myself included, have not given enough credit to the hard work that the city has done to come up with this plan. I recognize there were a lot of long hours and the parking has improved. My motions and different things are not to say that I don't like that there's more parking. This is just merely about fairness for small businesses. I understand that there's a risk for parking, like Alderman Gouveia said, but if I'm a small business and someday I hope to be on Main Street, I would want the space in front of my business to be the space that my customers utilize. Now, obviously, I could agree to a restaurant using that space if I thought that was a worthwhile endeavor, and some businesses might. I think giving people the option is the fairest way to come up with a solution. I understand that the lines don't align. I get that. I think we, as reasonable adults, can come up with some situation where if there's just like 1 foot of parking, you know, that's, but if it's like 60%, now we have a different discussion. So I think that it's a fair, you know, motion, and I'm not asking for much. I'm asking for the businesses to get the space in front of their store.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo most of what we've heard over the last few minutes, particularly my colleague from Ward 5. Pretty much nailed my thoughts. And with respect to Mr. Buckley, it's not so much, in my opinion, that I feel like, you know, a retailer is entitled to the space in front of their store. It's more that I don't feel like the restaurant is entitled to the spaces that aren't in front of theirs. And we also have to remember that we're not just talking about parking spaces, we're talking about the parking space and the corresponding length of sidewalk, because it's one unified dining area. So if we allow one place to expand laterally, we're not just taking up additional parking spaces, we're taking up additional sidewalk space, and that could prevent something like a clothing retailer from doing a sidewalk sale or things like that. So I would agree with Alderman Dowd that we should have something in place where a business can authorize the use of their space, but if they don't, then I feel like that's their space.
Go ahead.
One statement, I just want to, it sounds like Director Cummings has said that there was issues in the past with getting permission from your neighboring abutter. Just to say, everyone else in the city who owns a property or is on another property, you have to change your fence, you have to do anything on a shared property line or a zero lot line, you got to talk to your neighbor. And I think we can do that in downtown, whether it's businesses or not. If, you know, a resident or a residential owner is doing the same thing, I think a commercial owner can do the same thing.
Mr. Chair, I'm trying to move the question here because,
You got Tom.
Tom, go ahead. Excuse me, Alderman Lopez.
Thanks, I apologize. So just to clarify, I'm not on this committee, so I don't have a vote. But I was elected to represent the specific regions that are being discussed tonight. It's not my job necessarily or my authority to vote on this committee because I understand that I work as part of a team on the Board of Aldermen. I chose the Human Affairs Committee as a priority over infrastructure because there are other issues that I think need to be tackled. So collaboratively, it's important for me and how I represent people in the downtown areas that we're talking about who live there and vote, that this conversation does proceed fairly. But in order for me to be able to do my job, you do have to do yours. I can't vote on this at the Board of Aldermen until the task force takes place and then until the joint committee is able to vote on it. So I think that's as good a metaphor as what we're looking at here. The parking spaces that are shared by multiple businesses are very problematic. It's the King Solomon problem. You're not supposed to cut the baby up, but you're also not supposed to give it to either of the mothers. You're supposed to figure out who has the real need and who has the passion to care for it. So I think as aldermen, we have a responsibility to make those decisions and examine those situations, as they come. I think Alderman Jetty pointed out that it is the work of this working group, this task force, to examine these situations, not to create a blanket rule that specifically, or that just generalizes and makes a decision as to who gets the baby. Because the parking lot, or the parking spaces were not designed as amenities for specific businesses. They're shared amenities. They're common amenities. And so some restaurants may have more frontage. Some retail businesses may have more frontage. The use of the sidewalk in front of those spaces shouldn't necessarily be a decision that's left up to either neighbor. I don't think that's a good situation. And as Alderman Moran said, you need to talk to your neighbor. But 9 times out of 10, when people talk to their neighbor, they also need to talk to the city and they need to make sure they know where their property lines are. And that has been an issue of some debate in the past on the infrastructure committee, where the aldermen had to manage that situation with guidance from our city departments. So I think making an autopilot rule that just says, we want to make sure that nobody can use this space unless X, Y, or Z says, is not being attentive to the situations because you're already weighing the policy based on one side or the other. I think you should consider the plan as presented. You should consider the specific instance that was presented with glorious possibilities where neighbors did make an agreement and focus on that. But I don't think you should make blanket rules that might have unintended consequences in other areas, because it's your job to examine those as they come and to manage those situations. And most importantly, to manage the disagreement between the neighbors, because regardless of who gets to use that individual frontage, those businesses are still going to be connected to each other. They still have to interact with each other. And one of the things that I'm seeing as the representative of Ward 4 is one business telling another business what it needs, how it's supposed to operate, even though they're in entirely different industries, because this issue has become so contentious that one business believes that it knows what's best for the other. I think we were elected to do difficult things, and we can't take the easy way out just by saying, okay, well, we're going to create a generalized rule and then take our hands off the wheel. If there are more situations that come up, I think the infrastructure committee, as is written in the amendment, in the legislation, should review it. If not, if somebody has a difficulty with that particular makeup of oversight, then that can be a discussion that aldermen have when we talk about the final legislation. But I don't think you should introduce a blanket rule now that has to be accepted by many, many, many groups, starting with the Board of Aldermen and then continuing with every single business trying to do something with a neighbor that has a different opinion. I think that turns a disagreement of opinions into a tangible threat to income and a long-standing argument that we really don't want to see downtown. We want to see people able to cooperate and effectively cohabitate their different needs. I would also want to point out that businesses, in terms of signage, may have a disadvantage if they have a sweeping amount of obstructions or barriers in front of them, that's a signage issue. In terms of access or transportation, the sidewalks are required to have, to be accessible to handicapped individuals. They need to be wide enough for people who are in wheelchairs, scooters, whatever. So there should be no businesses that are actually blocked by restaurants. So if there is the restaurant that is treating the entire space from their doorway to the edge of the barrier between them and the street as a contiguous dining area, then that's something we need to monitor. That's not something that needs to be implemented into the design. It's something that just needs to be upheld because we already have legislation saying that sidewalks need to be passable and that, you know, everybody shares that right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Jettie, look at the clock and I'll let you determine, is this new information you want to provide in your comment?
Yes, and I'll be very short. I just want to
It would
point
be
out,
appreciated by the chair.
I just want to point out that this is not a new concept. You know, restricting restaurants' use of the sidewalk and the parking spot to their frontage or abutters with permission is what is being done in Portsmouth. It's what's being done in Derry. It's what's being done in Manchester. It's what's being done in Concord, and probably countless other places, but I know those cities for sure. And I'll stop. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr.
Do
Chair.
see we have engineer Dan Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the motion, I'm a little confused by the motion because it talks to areas on the sidewalk and the parking spot in front, but this layout we have here has continuous run of barrier. It wouldn't, I don't know how we would implement in the road barrier that would start and stop at various businesses that wanted it or didn't want it. It has tapered ends, which are for safety reasons. So if there was a crash impact, it's a lesser impact. And then the barrier is, intended to work as a system in a run. So on the sidewalk, it's easier. You can have a 90-degree, come off the building, make your rectangular dining area. And you can have multiple segments of that, which is what currently occurs. But if we're going to do this extended dining in the roadway, I couldn't support a piecemeal approach to that. I think the places that are doing, getting the business's approval or renting the space or whatever, I don't know that those are doing the in the roadway additional expanded area. Those are just taking up parking spots, which would be a completely different plan than this plan that's presented for consideration. So I just want to bring those things to the board's attention and consideration.
Okay, I think we all had the opportunity to speak. I would like to see us move to question. Keeping in mind the hour is getting nigh. So without objection, may I move to question?
Can we reread the?
Oh, I think we're gonna have to. I think a lot of us forgot what it was.
It would be my genuine pleasure. And Alderman Moran, correct me if I get any of this wrong, but so I've got the motion from Alderman Moran to amend to say that they will allow 2 spaces in front of Glorious Possibilities and to allow businesses using the extended space provided by the barriers to allow expansion laterally with the approval of the business being encroached upon.
Or the abutter.
The abutter, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and for this, I think we're gonna have some contention, so I will call for a roll call vote.
Could you say that one more time?
Sure. So the motion by Alderman Moran to amend would allow 2 spaces in front of Glorious Possibilities and would allow businesses that are using the extended space provided by the barriers to expand laterally with the approval of the business being encroached upon or the abutter.
Only with the approval?
Alderman Down.
Yeah, can you point out?
We're in the
that area
voting
where
mode,
we're
but
talking about?
quickly, yes, go ahead, what?
Can we point out where the parking spaces we're talking about are?
Tim, where's Glorious Possibilities on that now?
So Glorious Possibilities, that would be right in through here. So we would tighten this up. I would have to talk to Dan Hudson to find out exactly how he would want to lay it, but we would try to, bring it in a little bit more like this to create that additional second spot where my cursor is right here.
I believe there's also, I don't remember what's next to San Francisco Kitchen. right? Wouldn't there be a lateral movement there as well?
I was only addressing the glorious possibilities question. If you want me to address the other side, I'd be happy to do so.
We are in the
It's
voting
not part of
mode.
the motion.
It is part of the motion. I'm talking about all businesses. I was just making a caveat that if my motion was voted down, that we would at least have glorious possibilities one more spot, but ideally, it would be all businesses have to ask for the abutters approval.
No, you can't have a caveat in a motion.
Well, he changed the caveat to an amendment.
Right,
so he
okay,
said that
but
he-
as long as you know, I never
Right.
heard of a caveat on a motion.
I didn't know how to word it, but.
No, it don't happen. Okay.
So if you want me to show you San Francisco's kitchens, I can do that. San Francisco kitchen only has like one parking space. I actually pulled this up to make it a little bit easier to show. So this is the garden space, if you will, that's in the front that prohibits any type of true outdoor dining right in front of their frontage, which the current amendment obviously doesn't take that into consideration. So they're shifted a little bit under the current amendment. If adopted, you know, you can see that this parking stall doesn't actually line correctly with the frontage. So there'd be an encroachment right there that the abutter would need to get permission from the restaurant, just to even use any type of extended outdoor dining right in through here. The way the current plan is written is it goes a little bit beyond this light pole. So it's a little bit more than one space. This is not a full parking space right here, but it gives you about a parking space and a half, if you will, to San Francisco kitchen, if you were to follow the plan that is laid out in front of you. If you follow the amendment, I don't know if you'd have any outdoor dining right here.
And Director Cummings, would I be correct, there's several bump outs on Main Street, whether it be for the crosswalks or whatever, that would skew the parking as well, correct?
That's correct, yep, that's right. We would have to do that for every area, we would have to look at it.
Okay.
Assuming that this motion applies to the entirety of the.
We have a pending question, but Mr. Buckley, go ahead.
It's in a similar vein, like in front of MT's, we have a very large planting area that straddles the entire middle of both my spaces. So would that mean that I would have to go to, because that would give me no parking that's truly in front of my restaurant, because there is none. I have very, very little. Would that, if this was went forward, would that mean I'd have to go to the church to get permission to do my dining in one of their spaces? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's.
So I don't get any unless the church says it's okay.
Correct.
Is correct? Yeah?
Or Mary Lou.
The other side's not really contiguous to our space.
Let's focus on there's a pending question. I want to keep the ball rolling here. So without objection, I did ask if we could call the question, and I was granted such permission. So will the clerk please read the amendment?
So the motion from Alderman Moran is to amend to allow 2 spaces in front of Glorious Possibilities and to allow businesses that are using the extended space provided by the barriers to expand laterally with the approval of the business being encroached upon or the abutter.
Okay, roll call vote. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Dowd.
No.
Alderman Camo is a yes. Alderman Gouveia?
Yes.
Alderman Jettie?
Yes.
Alderman Moran?
Yes.
Alderman Cathy?
Yes.
Alderman Tebow?
No.
Mary Lou Blaisdell?
No.
Commissioner Shea?
No.
Kathy Cardin-Smith?
Yes.
Michael Buckley?
No.
Ruth Boland?
Yes.
And Alderman O'Brien?
No.
There's 7 yes. And 6 no's.
Excuse me. Thank you. Alderman Dow.
Yeah, the reason I voted no was I was actually like.
Well, we have
Kathy.
another question coming up.
Well, I know, I just can explain that I like this backup to give the 2 spaces, but I think we're convoluting it with the rest of the motion, but it passed.
I think most certainly it is convoluting. And if somebody on the prevailing side wants to call for a reconsideration, we could do that. But it is, I have to agree. And we'll leave it at that. Okay, can you read the next motion?
No.
So the motion before us as amended,
Ma'am, we're in session. Could you sit down, please? Thank you.
so the motion before us as amended is from Alderman Kathy, to say that extended dining by use of the barriers only be allowed directly in front of the businesses that are using them. And then also includes the subsequent amendment, is that correct?
You have to get permission from the abutter, yeah.
Yep. So the motion is that extended dining by use of the barriers will only be allowed directly in front of the businesses using them.
And I
And
call
that
a roll
includes
call
the-
vote.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Camozzi, yes. Alderman Govea,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Moran,
Yes.
Alderman Kathy,
Yes.
Alderman Tebow,
No.
Mary Lou Blaisdell,
No?
Commissioner Shea,
No.
Kathy Carden-Smith,
Yes.
Michael Buckley,
No.
Ruth Boland,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien.
No?
You have 8 yes and 5 no.
Okay, the chair, excuse me, the chair wants to remind everybody that I am not going to put this to bed until we work through map section 2. Okay, so we're going to keep going. I do note the time is 10:25. I know some of us have commitments to the state of New Hampshire tomorrow morning, but we're going to continue with the questions on map number 2. Yes, Alderman Dow.
Yeah, I just, question for the downtown merchants that are part of us. That last motion, how does that curtail your ability to do the extended dining? Or is it just that you need to get authorization from your neighbors to use their spaces? I'm just curious, because I think that we don't want to nix the entire downtown dining if we made a motion that's going to curtail the entire thing.
I can't speak for Michael, but I think listening to what the engineer said, he can't haphazardly place barriers. It doesn't make sense. And it seems to me a yes vote said that they would be, am I wrong? That they would be haphazardly, I mean, maybe I say yes, but someone else says no. I don't see how it would work.
Alderman Theobald.
Thank you. I've been patient all night. I just want to say that basically we're done. Because
We're done.
Because looking at it
No,
now.
we haven't come to a motion to pass.
Do I get to speak? No.
Oh, no, but I'm saying you're not done. We haven't had a motion.
I get that piece of it, but we've just taken away San Francisco Kitchens, probably their only spot, right? We've taken away Mr. Buckley's 2 spots. So why are we going any further? Why don't we just do the motion, let's go through, pass it, it'll be 8 to 5 and we'll be done.
Well, there might, the chair has the opinion, this might have a remedy within the court of law.
Okay.
For a particular business, I think that's all we did tonight. Lawyers have to eat too.
Okay, I was just making sure, 'cause it seems like a waste to go through
I think
this.
Alderman Jettie would agree, because if somebody's got to get out with the transit and everything else, if the parking space is in front of one particular business and everything else like that, I've seen worse things go through the court system. So I could see where this would be contested, and my opinion would be rightfully so. If somebody was a proprietor and denied because of 6 inches, denied on a parking space. You tell me, you live in the same world I do. Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. With the amendment that Alderman Moran made, it's still possible that abutters are going to come to an agreement with the restaurant that they abut. So this motion doesn't preclude anything on this map from still happening. I don't think that it's appropriate for us to assume that we know how neighbors are going to respond to each other.
I think what you're missing is the city owns the street, so therefore it's fair game. Alderman Theobald.
My thing is, if discussing this, how are we going to know about the abutters during this? I mean, do we have to wait to hear from them? Like, we still have to pass or not pass this?
That's a good question, but I'm carrying forward.
Okay.
I mean, we have a lot more to be done, you know, before this is finished.
Mr. Chair, could I respectfully request that we not re-debate the previous motion, that we move on to finishing map 2?
Yeah, that's my intention.
Okay, well, thank you.
You have a motion?
I do. I would like to move that we accept map 2 as revised and move on to map 3.
Okay, there's a motion to accept map 2 as revised and moved on to map 3. Yes, Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, so I'm not ready to accept this yet. So on Factory Street, Mr. Cummings, you said that, I know that, I referred the Gleason family to you, and I know that, Mr. Dennis Gleason, talked about how well he's worked with you and how cooperative you've been. But what you said about their wanting sidewalk dining is different than what he said to me. What he said to me was that he was concerned about parking, being able to accept deliveries. Did he speak to you about that?
He did, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you may.
He did, and he very specifically said he wants outdoor dining in front of his restaurant due to ADA accessibility issues, and that he asked that we consider including him participating this year, which he recognizes a change from what he's asked for in previous years. So I told him I would bring that to this group's attention as well as City Engineer Hudson's attention. I know we had previously laid out some extended outdoor dining on Factory Street for the future use. I haven't seen a new diagram from the engineering department, but I would suggest it would be 1 or 2 spaces right in front of their storefront is what we would come back before you and look to get quickly amended if no one decides to make it a motion with this current legislation that's before you.
Okay, thank you. May I follow up? So I'll leave that. Thank you. He did make special mention of, that you've been very helpful to him, and so I'll leave that to you and him. So on Factory Street, there are those, at the corner of Water and Factory, there's a yellow line. Is that a barrier? And there are yellow lines near the alleyway that goes between 47 Factory and the other building there. Yeah, those two. Are those barriers? Concrete barriers?
Yes.
Okay, and could I ask you or Engineer Hudson, if he's still on the line, what is the purpose of those barriers? Are they really necessary?
It's my understanding from previous conversations with Engineer Hudson, he wanted to have something that would, 1, call out the crosswalk, but 2, also distinguish that this is an area for parking and not a travel lane, because it won't be necessarily striped appropriately or accordingly, and so we were trying to introduce some sort of again, traffic calming that would make people realize that this is, it will be signed, but to make people realize that this is not a travel way, which it currently is right now.
Okay, so that would explain the barrier at the corner of Water in Factory. Is that also true of the barriers at the crosswalk? Why, I mean, there's a painted crosswalk there. Why would we need barriers there? Maybe, I don't know if you want Director Hudson, Engineer Hudson to...
Sure. So currently there's 2 lanes on Factory Street, 2 travel lanes for the length of Factory Street. There is no parking on the north side of Factory Street. What this plan proposes is to block one of the travel lanes, similar to what we're doing on Main Street, and instead provide additional parking area. So I am sure we can accommodate the parking that requested, the outdoor dining area, requested at 57 Factory. A couple spots there. But then what's shown in orange on that plan would remain additional parking area, which doesn't exist, but would, help offset some of the lost parking on Main Street due to the dining. And we essentially created this pattern last year as well. Although I think there's some confusion about the fact that it was allowed to park there.
So could I follow up? So I don't understand why, if there's parking, I mean, there's parking all over the city, and you don't have barriers there to indicate there's parking. I'm saying that because I think the fewer barriers we can get away with, the better. And the barriers that were there last year were probably the worst examples of decorated barriers. So if there's a way of eliminating those barriers, I guess I'm asking, is there a way to eliminate those barriers?
We can eliminate the barriers, but then it returns to a travel lane. So then we would not be able to do the additional dining, or maybe we could still do the dining, and that would be the only restriction on the street. But it's a travel lane currently. It's not a parking spot. We're adding a parking spot by adding the barrier. And we have to block a lane down at the Main Street end because currently there's double left turns onto Main Street, but we only have one receiving lane on Main Street. So the thought process was, since we have to block a lane already down at Main Street, we would continue that lane blockage through the length of Factory Street, and add parking and add dining where people wanted dining.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Shays first.
I have some similar concerns about the Factory Street layout, but my biggest concern about the Factory Street layout is that the arrangement for these additional parking spaces was concession that was developed in partnership with all of the businesses who offered feedback throughout this process. We were doing something extra there. I think that people who are concerned about the San Francisco kitchen area of seating being approved with the blessing of abutters have valid concerns. I have trouble with the idea of this area of additional parking as a concession without knowing that that space of outdoor dining will be available. I don't know that there's a solution to that in the context of this conversation, and if someone has one, I don't want to make a caveat, but
why not?
I think it's important to know that great lengths have been made to make this parking available, and this body has set up a scenario where the give and take is only now a give to one party potentially, and that concerns me. And like I said, I don't know that there's an answer, but I think it's worth saying.
Thank you. Alderman Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Factory Street. I drive down Factory Street a lot, as many of us here do as well. The fact of the matter is that there is no parking currently there. And if we don't put the barriers up and educate people that there's going to be parking there, and it's only temporary parking that's going to be put into that place, because I'm assuming that once whatever date you deem to end this on, that will become no parking again. So I think that's what the barriers are, is just to kind of let people know you can park in through here. I agree. I dislike barriers as much as possible. So, you know, maybe we're going to do what you talked about at the beginning, put other type of things there. But I do think there needs to be a start and an end, a delineation as to where the parking is. I know there's parking across the street. In some of the areas there's the parking garage as well. But this was a concession to add more parking spaces. And I think if we're going to do the more parking spaces through the whole length of this versus putting up barriers and not being used for that, I think that's a good idea. But I think you do need to have, just for safety reasons, you need to have a delineation of beginning and end, and whether it's barriers or obviously can't be barrels because you voted all that down. But I think there needs to be something there to kind of let people know that there's parking there, kind of similar to what they did on Main Street in front of the pharmacy and all of that area there. You have to tell them this is a start, this is a stop. And I don't think people are going to go like this in and out. And I do think those parking spaces will be utilized. I mean, that's how we reduced it down from losing 70-plus parking spaces to 40-plus parking spaces. So just my comment.
Thank you. Alderman Kathy.
Mr. Cummings, I'm not super familiar with that restaurant building. It looks like it's 2 stories to me, and the restaurant only operates at the top story, is that correct?
Which restaurant are you referring to?
Sorry, the one on the left end of Factory Street, or the west end.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yep.
They only own the top floor, correct?
Oh, no, it's multi-floored.
It's multi-floored?
It's a multi-floored restaurant.
Could there be a possibility for them to have outdoor dining adjacent to the building on the lower level in like that parking area, or? Okay.
I believe they have a roof deck.
Oh, okay, all right.
But, and if I could, Mr. Chair? They do.
Yes, you may.
I was just gonna say, their only type of outdoor dining is a roof deck or a patio that's in the rear of their restaurant, but it's not ADA accessible,
Oh, okay.
which was part of the reasons why the current owner suggested they would like to have something to make it ADA accessible for all their patrons.
Alderman Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Commissioner Shea's point, clarifying question, were you saying that if San Francisco Kitchen was unable to achieve the outdoor dining that they desire, that you would potentially like to see dining on Factory Street for them as well? And so you don't
No.
want to just make it parking?
What I would like to see is the allowance for that parking space along the length of Factory Street, not to include the space in front of Tailspinner. That's the restaurant on the far left there, because I think that regardless, we want to leave that opportunity open for them for outdoor dining. What I would like to see is the concession parking along that 2/3 of Factory Street be contingent upon the approval of the outdoor dining in front of San Francisco Kitchen. And this will be a trade-off for the adjacent business of 2 parking spaces that are close to their business versus perhaps 9. Is that about right? 9 spaces. So I would like that length of parking, and I don't know if I can motion that. That sounds like a caveat, but that's my intention and that's what I would want to see.
The chair would like to remind everybody, we have a pending motion on the table. So this is discussion on the motion. Yes.
Would Alderman Como entertain temporary withdrawing it?
Yes, if it seems like there's more discussion to be had. I mistakenly assumed that we had kind of concluded the block when I made my motion, so I will withdraw my motion so we can entertain more conversation.
I greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Alderman Como. I would like to make a motion for the parking from the crosswalk, the mid-block crosswalk to Main Street that is being added for the downtown to be contingent upon the approval of outdoor dining in front of San Francisco Kitchen as outlined in the proposal here.
Discussion on the motion. Yes, Ms. Pollard.
So I think I heard Mr. Wingate up here saying he would not have a problem with half of a parking space being in front of his spot, which would then give San Francisco Kitchen a full spot. So. So can we make a, can I make a motion? Amendment, can I make an amendment to something that?
Well, it has to be about something.
I'm amending something, I don't know, that there be one parking space for San Francisco Kitchen. Approved.
If I may discuss that.
Yeah, this is discussion. Why don't you think about what you want to do, and then we'll get back to you.
Well, I think she knows what she wants to do. But there is an issue with that in that you have an advancing tipped jersey barrier. So initially you have the tipped jersey barrier, and Dan Hudson could perhaps indicate if I'm onto something here, but you've got to have that tip in first for safety. And if you have that tip in first with a singular parking space available, it cuts diagonal across that parking space. So giving them the one parking space would actually give them 50% of a grilled cheese sandwich cut diagonal portion of the parking space. And I'd ask Mr. Hudson to clarify if that's the case.
That's the case.
Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
Can we talk to somebody in the audience if we want to talk to them? I know they can't talk to
Nope.
us. No, okay.
This is why this is a joint task force here. Pretend they don't exist. They exist because they're the public, like on TV, but we're not allowed to have communication with them.
Okay.
This is the task force here. Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, so the parking along Factory Street, there's the shoe shop, Gary's, who had a barrier in front of his place last summer, and he complained about that, so we're providing him with some parking.
Right.
This extended parking along the north side of Factory Street is also a concession to the River Casino, who lost parking because of the construction of the apartment building, the School Street apartment building. So this parking is not necessarily a direct concession to the people on the west side of Main Street. It's really not one, it's not a tit for tat situation. So I'm not going to vote for your motion.
Alderman Coleman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo what Alderman Jettie was just saying. I reject the idea that we should get rid of all of the parking on Factory Street as recompense for removing one small section of outdoor dining on Main Street. The parking on Factory Street would benefit potentially dozens of businesses or more. So I would also not support that motion.
So if I could, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you may.
So I just wanted to make sure everyone understands that this Factory Street parking was added in an effort to try to add additional supply to the marketplace. However, the data shows that you don't need to add this parking. We have more than enough parking in the downtown to accommodate our demand and future demand. But what we wanted to do was try to find ways where we could add additional parking supply to help alleviate the concerns that some people have raised because they believe that there was a loss of parking and there was a need for it. I would think that if you were to do away with this parking, you could use this area in other ways, and not necessarily for parking or not necessarily for a travel lane. And that would be something to discuss at a later date. We just know that that was, in the spirit of compromise, something we wanted to offer up to try to help mitigate the issue for everyone.
Ms. Boland.
I drive down Factory Street quite often, and I think that if it's only gonna be one lane going out to Main Street, that it would be wise to have one lane the whole length of Factory Street and keep the proposed parking there. Otherwise, it's gonna be a merging nightmare.
Director Shea?
I would disagree with the idea that it would be a merging nightmare, only because Factory Street is a one-way road. So as you approach, having the initial section of the block as one lane, you're going to be merging there, whether it's that section or the full length. Removing this parking would create, I mean, it's a trade-off, but it would create an opportunity for a filling lane for left-hand turns, and more clearance for cars to actually divide themselves as to whether they're going left or going straight. And so it would be it would potentially reduce backup on this road that could otherwise be created as a result of no left-hand turning lane, or a left-hand turning lane that is only 2 car lengths.
Alderman Como.
If I could just respond to that, I believe it was either Engineer Hudson or it might have been Director Cummings that spoke a moment or two ago about how there's only one lane of traffic going north on Main Street, so we can't have 2 left-hand turning lanes coming off of Factory Street. So that was going to be, that lane's going to be eliminated at the intersection anyway. So if we have to reduce that down to 1 lane, we might as well utilize that space for parking.
Okay, further discussion on the motion? Can the clerk read the motion?
If I could clarify, Ms. Boland, did you make an amendment?
She has not yet.
Are you going to?
No.
Okay, so then the motion before us is from Commissioner Shea, and correct me if I got any of this language wrong. The motion from Commissioner Shea is that the parking spaces created on Factory Street will be contingent upon San Francisco Kitchen getting outdoor dining on Main Street.
Further, it would be the parking spaces from the mid-block crosswalk to Main Street.
Okay, I will clarify that.
Let the clerk catch up and then he'll read the amended motion. Be scribed.
I should do this on a laptop.
Rejuvenated.
All right, so the motion from Commissioner Shea is that the parking spaces created on Factory Street from mid-block to Main Street be contingent upon San Francisco Kitchen getting outdoor dining on Main Street.
Expanded outdoor dining.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, nice job. You're doing a fine job over there. I'm going to call roll call. Clerk, call the roll.
All right. Alderman Dowd.
No.
Alderman Camoes, no. Alderman Gavea.
No.
Alderman Jettie.
No.
Alderman Cathy.
No.
Alderman Tebow.
Yes.
Mary Lou Blaisdell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shea.
Yes.
Kathy Carden-Smith.
No.
Michael Buckley.
Yes.
Ruth Boland.
No.
Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
You have 6 yes. And 8 no.
Okay. Now I'm open to future motions. Are we done with map 2?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we are done with map 2, and I would motion,
Can we move, is that the end of map 2?
yes,
That's the bottom?
that's the bottom.
Yeah, okay.
I would motion that we move, I motion that we are complete with map 2 and move to map 3.
Okay. Motion is to conclude with the discussions on map 2 as amended and move to map 3. All those in favor signify by, discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. A couple of house cleaning issues. Just
Sorry,
to
Mr. Chair, how many nays were there? Thank you.
I'm going to conclude at this particular point. Unless anybody wants to stay, I don't have to be in Concord till 9 o'clock in the morning, but I got to be there at 9 o'clock. I'm going to try to save the citizens $2 million of the city. So it's important to me to get there at 9 o'clock.
I think you ought to leave now.
Without objections, I think we'll look to terminate at this point. Now, that means tomorrow night, same bat time, same bat station. We'll be back here until we get this done. Okay? So we're gonna meet and believe me, I already booked next week. And I have booked until we get this done.
And just a clarification, Mr. Chairman, tomorrow is 7 PM, not 7:30.
That's correct, 7 PM start. Now, Alderman Dow, quickly, because I'm on a roll here.
Motion to adjourn.
No, can you hold your motion to adjourn? I'm not entertaining it at this time. There seems to be several legal questions. My legal question is, where does the city begin and the store end or begins? We plow the sidewalks. The city plows the sidewalks. We pave the sidewalks. Do we own the sidewalks? So my question to legal, does that carry out to the street? So what we voted on, marking outdoor dining to the lineage of what was determined on the parking of lines, does that have any legal contention? To make sure we all don't get in trouble, Director Cummings, I'm gonna charge you with this because I gotta go save the citizens $2 million tomorrow. So I'll take that as the higher priority. Can I direct you to have an answer from legal on what was voted on this evening to see if that meets the constitutional muster as required by law? Do you have any questions of what I am looking? All right. Hopefully that is the case. All right. We're gonna adjourn, but the committee stays because I'm gonna call to order the next meeting. So to us, citizen friends, thank you. I did not intend to keep you to this tardy hour, but thank you for being here. Very much appreciative. Okay, motion to adjourn, Alderman Dow?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, sir. Oh, yes, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. I will now call to order, and I'm going to quickly look for a motion to adjourn, but I will now call to order a joint meeting of the Committee of Infrastructure and Planning and Economic Development. A joint meeting was held of the Committee of Infrastructure and Planning and Economic Development Committee was held Wednesday, March 30th, 2022 at 10:56 p.m. in the automatic chamber via Zoom teleconference. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda on the city's website for the meeting link. Alderman at-large Michael O'Brien and Alderman at-large Melvin Moran are the presiding co-chairs. Okay, we'll go through it. Appease me and call the roll.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Cameau is present. Alderman Gavea.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Cathy.
Present.
Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Tebow.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Present.
Alderman O'Brien.
Here, also in attendance is Mr. Matt Sullivan and Tim Cummings are also present. Alderman Dow, do you have a motion?
Lori's also present.
Yeah. Since there's going to be no action from this committee based on the previous task force meeting, I would make a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by what?
Point of order.
Point of order.
Public meeting, so we have to entertain public comment.
No.
We don't have anything.
A motion to adjourn is always in order.
No,
a motion to adjourn is always in order.
No, I'm not saying it's not in order. I'm saying don't all.
It's the highest priority of motions.
Can't be debated.
Adjourning
It's
supersedes
non-debatable.
that.
Oh, okay.
It's not debatable.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's the motion of the most highest order. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, the meeting's called at 10:58 PM.
Well, if this is joint.